The Alpha King had just ordered an entire kingdom to fear him when three little wolf pups ran into the throne hall carrying flowers. For one long, impossible moment, no one moved. The great hall of Thornkeep had been built to make powerful men feel small. Black stone pillars rose toward a ceiling hidden in shadow. Silver flames burned inside iron bowls along the walls. Hundreds of nobles, warriors, servants, and council elders stood beneath the frozen banners of Blackridge Kingdom. Not one of them dared whisper. At the far end of the hall, Alpha King Ronan Blackthorn sat upon a throne carved from the bones of an ancient mountain beast. He wore ceremonial armor the color of midnight. A black iron crown rested above the scar crossing his left brow. His broad shoulders remained perfectly still beneath a heavy royal cloak. He did not need to raise his voice. From this day forward, Ronan said, defiance will be answered before it becomes rebellion. The words traveled through the hall like cold wind. Several nobles lowered their heads. A servant near the eastern wall began to tremble so badly that the silver cups on her tray softly touched one another. Ronan heard them. Everyone heard them. No one looked at her. High Chancellor Malrek Voss stood beside the throne with his hands folded over his dark robes. A faint scent of clove oil drifted from his gloves. The kingdom has grown careless, Malrek said. A little fear will remind them where safety comes from. Ronan's jaw tightened. He had not slept properly in 3 nights. Border disputes had returned. Supply wagons had vanished near the northern pass. 2 lesser alphas had begun questioning royal authority. Fear was simple. Fear obeyed. Fear did not die in a broken carriage and leave 3 children crying in a room their father could no longer bear to enter. Ronan rose from the throne. The iron silence edict begins tonight. The great doors burst open. A small boy ran into the hall wearing 1 boot. A second boy followed him, carrying a crooked chain of white flowers twice as long as his body. Behind them came a little girl with dark curls, solemn gray eyes, and a flower crown clutched between both hands. The entire court stared. Finn Blackthorn, firstborn by 7 minutes and proud owner of the missing boot, skidded across the polished floor. Caleb nearly tripped over the flower chain. Ivy walked behind them with the grave concentration of someone carrying a royal treasure. At the eastern entrance, Mara Vale appeared with an empty woven basket against her hip. She stopped so suddenly that the basket slipped from her fingers. It struck the floor with a hollow sound. "Oh," she whispered. Captain Gideon Hart turned toward her. "Did you do this?" Mara watched Finn sprint toward the throne. "I would like the record to show," she murmured, "that I specifically suggested walking." Gideon stared at her. Mara swallowed. They interpreted it creatively. Every face in the hall turned toward the low-born Omega. Her simple gray dress still carried bits of dried leaves around the hem. A loose strand of brown hair had escaped her braid. There was a green stain across one cheek, probably from a crushed stem. She looked less like a conspirator and more like someone who had recently lost an argument with a garden. Unfortunately, the garden appeared to be winning. "Stop them," Malrek ordered. 2 guards stepped forward. Finn immediately growled. It was not a very frightening growl. It sounded more like an angry puppy arguing with a spoon. Still, both guards hesitated. Ronan lifted one hand. They froze. The Alpha King looked down as his 3 5-year-old heirs crossed the final stretch of black stone. His children had avoided him for months. They bowed when instructed. They sat silently during formal dinners. They answered questions with careful nods. They never ran toward him. They never climbed onto his throne. Today, Finn grabbed Ronan's armored knee and began pulling himself upward. Ronan stared at him. Finn stared back. "You are wearing too much black," the boy announced. A quiet gasp moved through the court. Ronan slowly looked at Malrek, as if confirming that he had heard correctly. Malrek's face remained stiff. Finn managed to climb onto the throne beside his father. Caleb held up the flower chain. Mara said flowers make rooms feel less sad. Mara closed her eyes. "I also said not to interrupt the king," she muttered from the doorway. Finn reached for Ronan's shoulder and pushed a large white moonbell into the joint of his armor. "There," he said. Ronan looked at the flower. Then at his son. Finn studied the result with deep concern. You still look mostly terrifying. Someone near the back made a choking sound. Captain Gideon suddenly became very interested in the floor. Ronan's gaze swept across the hall. Silence returned instantly. But when he looked back at Finn, the boy was already adding another flower. Caleb approached more carefully. He wrapped the flower chain around Ronan's left arm. His small fingers trembled when they brushed the dark metal. Ronan noticed. The boy was trying not to show fear. That realization cut more deeply than Ronan expected. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Caleb glanced toward Mara. She did not answer for him. Instead, she gave the child a tiny nod, leaving the choice in his hands. Caleb looked back at his father. "Because everyone looks afraid of you. They should be." The boy frowned. "Why?" The question was soft. Simple. More dangerous than anything spoken by the council that morning. Ronan had faced generals without flinching. He had broken sieges, crossed burning forests, and killed men who had sworn to take his throne. But he had no answer for a 5-year-old child holding flowers. Ivy reached the bottom step. Unlike her brothers, she did not climb. She stood with the flower crown pressed against her chest and looked up at him. Ronan's expression changed. Only slightly. Mara saw it. The hardness around his eyes eased for half a heartbeat before returning. He looked tired, she realized. Not weak. Not cruel. Just terribly tired. Ivy had barely spoken since the winter fever nearly a year ago. The royal healers called it a grief response. Malrek called it proof that the heirs were too fragile. Mara called it what it was. A frightened little girl protecting the last quiet place inside herself. Ronan stepped down from the throne. The movement made several guards tense. Ivy did not run. He stopped in front of her, towering above the child. Her fingers tightened around the crown. Mara held her breath. Ronan slowly knelt. A murmur passed through the hall. The Alpha King of Blackridge did not kneel before anyone. Ivy lifted the flowers. Ronan lowered his head just enough for her to reach him. Her small hands placed the crooked crown over his black hair. Several moonbells leaned toward one side. A winter rose rested directly above his scar. Finn smiled proudly. Caleb whispered, "It needs more balance." "It is fine," Ronan said. "It is very crooked," Caleb replied. Ronan looked at him. Caleb immediately hid behind Finn. A soft, almost invisible smile touched Mara's lips. Ronan noticed it. Their eyes met across the hall. Mara's smile vanished. She lowered her head, but not before he saw warmth in her face. Not mockery. Not fear. Warmth. It unsettled him more than laughter would have. Ivy reached out and touched the scar on his cheek. Ronan went completely still. "Papa," she whispered. The hall seemed to stop breathing. It was the first word she had spoken in public for nearly a year. Ronan's eyes darkened with something no council member had ever seen. Pain. Ivy rested her little palm against his face. "You forgot how to come home." Ronan closed his eyes. Only for a moment. But Mara saw the breath leave him. The feared king looked as though a small hand had found the one wound armor could not cover. Then Caleb sniffed. His head turned sharply toward Ronan's collar. The boy's pupils widened. A low growl vibrated inside his chest. "Caleb?" Ronan asked. The moonbell resting against the king's neck began to change. Its white petals darkened at the edges. Black-blue veins spread toward the center. One flower changed. Then another. Within seconds, every blossom touching Ronan's ceremonial collar had turned the color of bruised midnight. Mara's blood ran cold. She knew that reaction. Her mother had shown it to her years ago, inside a kitchen lit by a single candle. Moonbells did not fear kings. They did not carry curses. They changed color when they touched poison. "Don't move," Mara said. Her voice was not loud, yet it crossed the hall. The guards turned toward her. Malrek stepped between her and the throne. "How dare you command your king?" Mara barely heard him. Her gaze remained fixed on the blackening flowers. "Your Majesty," she said more softly, "please don't touch the collar." Ronan studied her. "Why?" Mara's hands had begun to tremble. She hid them in the folds of her skirt. Because those petals are reacting to something. Dr. Corvin Hale pushed through the council members. Nonsense. Remove the flowers at once. No, Mara said. Corvin glared at her. You are a laundry servant. Yes. Her voice shook, but she did not step back. Which means I know when something on a piece of clothing does not belong there. Finn slid down from the throne and moved beside Mara. Caleb followed. Ivy remained near Ronan but reached one hand toward the Omega. The three children had placed themselves between Mara and the council without being told. Ronan noticed everything. Their lack of fear around her. Their fear when Corvin approached. The flowers. Malrek's clenched hands. The sharp scent of cloves growing stronger inside the hall. Malrek looked at the black petals and said, Silver dusk can be absorbed through the skin. The king must remove the cloak immediately. Silence fell. Mara slowly turned toward him. Ronan did the same. No one had named the poison. Not yet. Malrek seemed to realize his mistake. His expression did not change, but one thumb rubbed nervously across the edge of his glove. A loose moonbell petal floated from Ronan's shoulder. It drifted through the air and landed against Malrek's hand. The edge of the petal turned black. Ronan rose to his full height. The softness that had appeared for his children disappeared beneath something colder. More dangerous. Every door to the great hall slammed shut. The guards drew their swords. Ronan removed the flower crown carefully and placed it in Ivy's hands. Then he looked at Mara. You will remain where I can see you. Mara swallowed. That sounds slightly better than a dungeon. It is not a promise. I assumed as much. For the briefest moment, something almost amused flickered in Ronan's eyes. Then he turned toward his council. No one leaves this hall, he said. No record is burned. No garment is removed. No servant is silenced. His gaze settled on Malrek. Someone tried to poison their king. Caleb pressed closer to Mara. Finn reached for his brother. Ivy held the crooked flower crown against her heart. Ronan's voice dropped lower. And before this day ends, I will know why my children recognize the danger before the men standing beside my throne. The doors of the great hall remained sealed. No one spoke above a whisper. The blackened moonbells lay across the stone floor like the remains of something once innocent. Ronan stood beside the throne, while Captain Gideon carefully removed his ceremonial cloak with a pair of iron tongs. Two guards carried a sealed chest forward. The poisoned garment was lowered inside without anyone touching the collar. Every movement felt painfully slow. Mara remained where Ronan had ordered her to stand. Finn held one side of her skirt. Caleb held the other. Ivy stood close enough that her small shoulder pressed against Mara's leg. The children surrounded her as if 3 5-year-olds could protect an Omega from an entire royal court. Mara looked down at them. This formation would be more intimidating, she whispered, if one of you were wearing both boots. Finn glanced at his bare foot. I ran out of time. You had 2 feet when the morning began. I still have 2. Mara opened her mouth, then decided she could not argue with that. A low sound came from the direction of the throne. Not quite a laugh. When Mara looked up, Ronan's expression was as hard as before, but something had changed around his eyes. Then Malrek stepped forward. The servant should be confined immediately. The warmth disappeared from Ronan's face. She will be questioned. She brought the flowers. My children brought the flowers. After she led them into a forbidden place. Ronan looked toward Mara. Is that true? The entire hall waited. Mara could have lied. She had learned early that powerful men often preferred lies that protected their pride. The truth had taken her mother from her. It had left Mara alone in a kingdom that still whispered the word traitor whenever she walked past. But Ivy's fingers had tightened around hers. Mara lifted her chin. Yes, Your Majesty. A wave of murmurs moved through the court. Malrek's mouth hardened with satisfaction. Ronan did not react. You entered the glass moonhouse? Yes. Knowing it was sealed by royal law? Yes. Knowing the last person accused of carrying poison from that place was your mother? The words struck harder than Mara expected. She felt Finn move closer. Mara kept her eyes on the king. Yes. Ronan studied her for several long seconds. Take her to the Eastern questioning room. The guards stepped forward. Ivy immediately made a small, frightened sound. Mara crouched before the children. It's all right. Finn frowned. It does not look all right. It rarely does when guards are involved. Gideon gave her a tired look. Mara lowered her voice. Present company excluded. Of course, he said dryly. She touched none of the children until they reached for her first. Finn slipped his hand into hers. Caleb pressed the repaired cloth wolf against her arm. Ivy clung to the edge of her sleeve. Ronan watched them. He had seen his children obey nurses, avoid healers, and freeze whenever council members entered the nursery. He had never seen them fear losing someone. Bring the children, he said. Malrek turned sharply. My king, they should be returned to the nursery. They witnessed the flowers change. They are 5. Ronan's gaze settled on him. And yet they noticed what my council did not. Malrek lowered his head. The children followed Mara from the hall. Ronan walked behind them. He told himself it was because she remained a suspect. He did not ask why his attention stayed on the faint red mark around her wrist, where Ivy had held too tightly. The Eastern questioning room had no windows. A narrow table stood in the center beneath one hanging lamp. The stone walls were bare except for the royal crest carved above the door. Mara sat on one side. Ronan sat opposite her. The children occupied a bench against the wall with Agnes, their elderly nurse. Gideon remained near the entrance. Malrek had been ordered to wait outside. He had not liked it. That alone had made Ronan certain it was the right decision. Mara folded her hands in her lap, so no one would see them trembling. Ronan noticed anyway. You knew what the flowers meant. My mother taught me. Before she was accused of poisoning my Luna? Mara's eyes lowered. Yes. Ronan leaned back. Then explain why you entered the place connected to my wife's death. Mara took a slow breath. 3 days ago, smoke from the nursery chimneys stained the curtains. I was told to collect them for washing. By whom? Nurse Agnes. Agnes straightened on the bench. That is true, my king. Mara continued. I was in the Eastern Linen Passage when Ivy followed me. Ronan looked at his daughter. Ivy lowered her face. She usually does not leave the nursery alone, he said. No, Mara replied softly. She usually does not leave it at all. The words were not an accusation. That made them worse. Ronan's jaw tightened. What happened? She stopped beside the old storage wall. There was a scent coming through the wood. Lavender and winter soil. Ivy lifted her head slightly. Mara looked toward her. She knew it. From her mother? Ronan asked. I think so. Something moved behind his expression, then disappeared. There was a loose panel behind a stack of linen crates, Mara said. Ivy crawled through before I could stop her. And you followed. She coughed. That was enough for you to break a royal seal. The seal was on the main door. The passage had no seal. That is a very careful distinction. Mara swallowed. I was frightened. You did not look frightened in the Great Hall. I had already embarrassed myself in front of half the kingdom. Fear had to wait its turn. Gideon looked down quickly. Ronan's mouth almost moved. Almost. Then he returned to the question. Why did no guards stop you? Mara hesitated. Answer. Guard Ellis saw me enter the passage. And? He said the moon house had been cursed for years. Ronan's voice became colder. What exactly did he say? Mara did not want to repeat it. She knew how easily a servant's foolish cruelty could become a death sentence when reported to an angry Alpha. He believed I would return, she said. That is not what he said. Mara remained silent. Ronan leaned forward. I asked for the truth. She looked at him. He said if the curse killed a laundry omega, the palace would save a meal. The room changed. Ronan did not raise his voice. He did not strike the table. But the scent of the Alpha inside him deepened until Agnes lowered her head and Gideon's shoulders stiffened. Finn watched his father with wide eyes. Ronan looked toward the captain. Find Ellis. My king. Alive? Ronan added. Gideon nodded once. Yes, your majesty. Mara's brows lifted. Ronan caught the expression. What? Nothing. You were clearly thinking something. Mara studied the table. I was thinking the word alive was reassuring. It was not meant to reassure him. I assumed as much. For the briefest second, Ronan looked almost amused. Then he noticed a loose piece of green leaf caught in Mara's hair. His hand moved slightly against the table. He stopped himself before reaching for it. The impulse irritated him. He did not touch suspects. He especially did not remove leaves from their hair. Continue, he said. Mara tucked the loose strand behind her ear, unknowingly dislodging the leaf. It fell onto her shoulder. Ronan looked away. The passage had opened into the potting room of the glass moonhouse. Mara described the cold first. It was not the sharp cold of winter. It was the still, forgotten cold of a room closed too long. Dust covered the tables. Most of the plants were dead. The glass ceiling had cracked in several places, allowing thin lines of daylight to fall across the floor. Ivy stood in the center of it all, holding one living moonbell in both hands. She was not afraid? Ronan asked. She was crying. His eyes moved toward his daughter. Ivy stared at her shoes. Why? She found a little wooden chair near the planting table. There was a faded ribbon tied to it. Ronan remembered the chair. Alara had painted it herself when she learned she was carrying 3 children. She had painted 3 silver wolves along the back and laughed when Ronan pointed out that one looked more like a badly fed fox. He had not thought of that chair in years. Ivy sat beside it, Mara said. She would not let me take her back. So you remained? Yes. How long? Nearly an hour. You could have called a guard. I did. Ronan's face hardened. No one came. Mara shook her head. They told me they were forbidden to cross the threshold. Then why did they not report you? They thought the Moonhouse would deal with me before anyone important had to. Ronan went still. Anyone important? The phrase stayed between them. Mara looked down at her hands. She had not spoken with bitterness. She sounded as though she were discussing weather. That disturbed him more than anger would have. What did you do inside? He asked. I opened one window. Ivy could not breathe well. And the flowers? She showed me where they were growing beneath an old watering pipe. You recognized them immediately. My mother used to grow moonbells. For poison testing? Mara's face tightened. For healing salves, for calming fever, for helping frightened children sleep. The court records say otherwise. The court records also say the Moonhouse is dead. Ronan held her haze. Neither of them looked away. There was fear in Mara's scent, but not deceit. That did not prove innocence. Still, Ronan had questioned spies who smiled without fear and soldiers who lied while bleeding. Mara looked terrified. She simply refused to let terror choose her words. Before Ronan could ask another question, Corvin's voice came from the hallway. The heirs must be returned to medical care. Ivy immediately stiffened. Caleb's fingers tightened around the cloth wolf in his lap. Finn stopped swinging his bare foot. Ronan saw the change. The children had been restless, curious, even quietly amused while Mara spoke. Now all 3 had become silent. Corvin entered when Gideon opened the door. The royal healer bowed. My king, the children have missed their morning tonic. Ivy made a small sound and slid off the bench. She crossed the room without looking at anyone and hid behind Mara's chair. Mara did not reach back for her. She simply lowered one hand beside the seat, palm open. Ivy took it. Ronan's gaze moved from his daughter to Corvin. What is in the tonic? A mild restorative. That was not my question. Corvin's expression remained calm. Herbs for grief, sleep, and delayed wolf development. Which herbs? The full formula is held in the medical archive. Bring it. Corvin hesitated. Only for a second. But Ronan saw it. The archive may be difficult to access today. Records are being reorganized. Then stop reorganizing them. My king, bring me the original formula. Corvin bowed. As you command. He turned to leave. Wait, Mara said. Everyone looked at her. She flushed slightly. Forgive me. I did not mean to command another royal official today. Ronan's eyebrow lifted. You appear to be developing a habit. An unfortunate one. Caleb slid from the bench. He walked toward his father with the cloth wolf held against his chest. The toy had one new ear and several mismatched stitches along its side. Mara recognized the stitches. She had repaired it the night before. Caleb stopped in front of Ronan. His eyes moved nervously toward Corvin. Then, he pushed 2 fingers into a small opening beneath the toy's leg. Mara frowned. She had sewn that opening closed. Caleb pulled out a narrow glass bottle. Half of its pale amber liquid remained inside. Corvin's face lost its color. Caleb placed the bottle in Ronan's hand. "I did not drink it yesterday," he whispered. Ronan looked at his son. "Why not?" Caleb's small nose wrinkled. "Because it smells like your flowers." Mara's breath caught. Ronan turned the bottle slowly. A dark wax seal covered its top. Pressed into the wax was the mark of the Royal Medical Office. Beneath it was a second symbol, almost too faint to see. The private seal of the High Chancellor. Ronan lifted his eyes toward Corvin. The healer took one step backward. Behind Mara's chair, Ivy whispered the words that changed the investigation completely. "Please don't make us drink the sweet medicine again." The narrow glass bottle in Ronan's hand appeared harmless. The pale liquid inside caught the lamplight with a warm amber glow, the sort of color meant to suggest honey, comfort, and sleep. His children reacted to it as if he were holding a blade. Caleb backed toward Mara's chair. Finn stood in front of his brother with one bare foot planted firmly on the stone floor. He was 5 years old, missing a boot, and prepared to challenge the royal healer with nothing but an angry frown. Ivy remained behind Mara. Her small hand held tightly to the Omega's fingers. Ronan lifted his eyes toward Corvin. "You told me this tonic helped them sleep." "It does, Your Majesty. You said it strengthened their wolf instincts." "It was designed to." "Then why are they afraid of it?" Corvin's throat moved as he swallowed. "The heirs are young. Children often resist medicine." Finn glared at him. "I resist peas." A brief silence followed. Finn pointed at the bottle. "That is worse than peas." Mara lowered her face, but Ronan saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Corvin did not appear amused. "The children cannot understand what is necessary for their health," he said. "Their fear is unfortunate, but hardly unusual." Mara's fingers tightened around Ivy's hand. Ronan noticed. He also noticed that she did not interrupt. She was learning not to command royal officials twice in one morning. Or perhaps she was simply waiting. "Captain Gideon," Ronan said, "seal this bottle." Gideon stepped forward with a small evidence box. Corvin moved before he seemed to think better of it. "My king, the tonic may become unstable if stored improperly." Ronan's gaze settled on him. "You seem unusually concerned about half a bottle of children's medicine." "I am concerned about the heirs." "So am I." The words carried enough alpha authority to make the hanging lamp tremble against its chain. Corvin lowered his head. Ronan placed the bottle inside the box himself. "Until I receive the original formula, no one gives my children another drop." Corvin looked up sharply. "Stopping suddenly could be dangerous." "Then you'll explain the risks in plain language." "The withdrawal could cause restlessness, fever, headaches, emotional distress. Those symptoms are already in your reports." Corvin became silent. Ronan turned toward Agnes. "Prepare the nursery. Mara will remain with the children today." Malrek's voice came through the half-open doorway. "That would be unwise." No one had invited the High Chancellor inside. He stood beyond the threshold in dark robes, his gloved hands folded calmly before him. Ronan looked at him. "I ordered you to wait outside." Malrek bowed. "I heard raised voices. I feared for the heirs." Finn leaned closer to Mara. "He always hears things through doors." Mara whispered. "That is because doors have no courage around him." Caleb made a tiny snorting sound. Ronan heard both of them. He chose not to reveal it. Malrek's eyes rested on Mara. "She is the daughter of a convicted traitor. Now a royal medicine has been discovered inside a toy she repaired." Mara looked toward Caleb's cloth wolf. The opening beneath its leg had been carefully sliced, not torn. Caleb must have hidden the bottle after she finished sewing it. "I did not place it there," she said. Malrek's expression remained polite. "Convenient." Caleb stepped forward. I did. Every adult turned toward him. The boy's courage immediately weakened, but Mara did not answer for him. She waited. Ronan lowered himself until they were nearly eye level. Why did you hide it? Caleb looked toward Corvin. He said if I spilled it again, he would hold my nose until I swallowed. The room became dangerously still. Corvin's face paled. That is not what I said. Caleb's shoulders folded inward. Ronan saw it happen. One denial from an adult, and the child was already beginning to doubt his own memory. Mara shifted from her chair and knelt beside Caleb, leaving space between them. She did not touch him. What do you remember? She asked softly. Caleb stared at the floor. He said I was making the king ashamed. Ronan stopped breathing. Caleb's voice grew smaller. He said real alpha pups do not cry over medicine. Mara looked up at Ronan. There was no accusation in her eyes. Only sadness. That was somehow worse. Ronan rose. Dr. Corvin, you will not enter the nursery without my permission. My king, I must protest. You may protest from your rooms. 2 guards stepped forward. Corvin stared at Malrek. The movement was brief, but Ronan saw it. Malrek gave him nothing. No rescue. No reassurance. Only a calm expression that suggested the healer had become replaceable. As Corvin was escorted away, Ronan turned to Gideon. Place 2 guards outside the medical archive. No record leaves. No fire is lit. No one enters without your personal approval. Yes, my king. Malrek's jaw tightened. You are allowing the claims of frightened children to guide royal policy. Ronan looked toward his 3 children. They are not guiding policy. His gaze returned to Malrek. They are telling me what happened inside my own home. Malrek bowed again. This time, the gesture looked less respectful. When he left, the scent of clove oil remained behind. Caleb's nose wrinkled. Mara saw it. So did Ronan. Neither spoke. Not yet. Sunlight entered the royal nursery for the first time in weeks. Mara pulled the heavy curtains apart, and a beam of pale winter gold spilled across the carpet. All 3 children squinted. Finn covered his eyes dramatically. We have been attacked by the sky. You will survive, Mara said. You cannot know that. I have considerable faith in curtains. Ronan stood behind a carved wooden screen near the nursery wall. The screen had once allowed royal nurses to observe sleeping heirs without disturbing them. Today, it allowed an Alpha King to watch his own children without making them freeze beneath his attention. He disliked hiding. He disliked the reason for it even more. The moment he entered a room, his children changed. Finn stopped speaking. Caleb watched every movement. Ivy became nearly invisible. Ronan had told himself they were naturally quiet. Now he wondered how many comfortable lies he had accepted simply because the truth required him to stay longer than 5 minutes. Mara did not begin with questions. She gathered the children's clothes and placed 3 choices on the bed. Finn chose a green shirt with one sleeve slightly longer than the other. Caleb chose gray because it matched his cloth wolf. Ivy pointed toward a soft blue dress. That one? Mara asked. Ivy nodded. Mara held it up. It has 6 buttons. Ivy looked concerned. 7, Caleb corrected. Mara counted them again. There are 7. Finn shook his head. You work with clothes. It is a difficult morning for mathematics. Behind the screen, Ronan's mouth almost curved. Mara helped Ivy dress, explaining each movement before making it. I am going to lift your sleeve now. I'm fixing the ribbon. May I move your hair? Every time, Ivy was allowed to nod or shake her head. No one rushed her. No one told her royal children should stand still. When their breakfast arrived, Mara set the trays on the low table instead of arranging the children in a formal line. Warm oats, sliced apples, bread, and milk filled the room with comforting scents. Finn reached for an apple. Agnes began to correct him. Mara gently touched the older nurse's arm. Let him choose first. He should eat the oats. He will. Finn looked suspicious. How do you know? Because I put honey in them. Finn immediately sat down. Ronan watched his son take the first spoonful without being ordered. Caleb broke his bread into equal pieces. Ivy smelled the milk before drinking it. Mara noticed everything without making any of it feel unusual. Finn reached across the table and knocked his cup over. Milk spread across the wood and dripped onto the carpet. The boy went completely still. His eyes moved toward the door. He was waiting for someone. A guard. A nurse. A punishment. Mara picked up a cloth. "Well," she said, "the carpet was thirsty." Finn stared at her. "That is not how carpets work. You appear very confident for someone who lost a boot." Caleb giggled. The sound was soft and brief, but it filled the room. Finn grabbed another cloth and helped wipe the milk. No one shouted. No one called him careless. Within moments, he was talking again. Ronan remained behind the screen, feeling as though he were watching a language he had forgotten how to speak. Nothing Mara did looked extraordinary. She opened curtains. She offered choices. She cleaned, spilled milk. Yet the room felt warmer around her. His children breathed differently. Even their scents had changed. The sharp edge of fear had softened. Ronan's attention settled on Mara's injured hands. Small cuts crossed her fingers from working in the neglected moon house. One knuckle was swollen. A thin scratch ran over her wrist, where a broken vine had caught her. She wrapped cloth around everyone else's wounds. She had done nothing for her own. Ronan stepped from behind the screen before deciding to move. All three children fell quiet. Mara turned. She looked surprised to see him, though she must have known he was there. Finn glanced at the screen. "You are very bad at hiding." Ronan looked at him. "I was not hiding. You are standing behind a wall. It is a screen." Finn considered that. Very bad at screening. Mara lowered her face. Her shoulders moved once. Ronan realized she was trying not to laugh. "You may laugh," he said. She looked up carefully. "Was that a royal order?" "No." "Then I should probably remain cautious." Something warm and unfamiliar moved through his chest. It disappeared when he looked at her hands again. "You are bleeding." Mara glanced down. A tiny red line had opened across her knuckle. "It is barely worth the drama." Ronan took a clean cloth from the table and held it toward her. She stared at it. He stared back. Slowly, Mara accepted it. Their fingers did not touch. Still, both noticed how close they came. "Thank you," she said. Ronan nodded once. Finn watched them with open curiosity. Mara quickly wrapped the cloth around her hand. Ronan suddenly felt as though the entire room had become too observant. He turned toward a small wooden chair beside the table. It was the only seat remaining. He tried to sit. The chair gave a warning creak. Mara's eyes widened. "Your Majesty." The legs folded beneath him. The most feared alpha in the northern kingdoms dropped nearly a foot before catching himself against the table. The bowl of oats jumped. A spoon flew through the air and landed on his shoulder. Silence followed. Ronan slowly removed the spoon. Finn made a strange sound. He pressed both hands over his mouth. It did not help. Laughter burst out of him. Bright, helpless laughter. Caleb joined him. Even Ivy's face opened into a small smile. Ronan remained crouched beside the broken chair with a spoon in one hand. Mara knelt to gather the pieces. "It surrendered very quickly, Your Majesty." He looked at her. Her eyes were shining. "You knew it would break." "I strongly suspected." "And you said nothing." "You had already decided to sit." "You could have warned me." "I tried." Finn fell sideways against Caleb, laughing harder. For the first time in months, the nursery echoed with the sound of his children's joy. Ronan stopped looking at the broken chair. He looked at them. His anger faded before it could form. Mara noticed the change in him. The feared Alpha King did not smile. Not fully. But the coldness left his face, and for one quiet moment, she saw the father hidden beneath the crown. Their eyes met. This time, Mara did not immediately look away. Something passed between them. Small. Fragile. Too new to name. Then Ivy's spoon slipped from her fingers. The little girl pressed both hands against her temples. Her breathing became shallow. Mara moved first. She sat on the carpet several feet away. "Ivy, look at me." Ivy's body began to shake. Ronan stepped forward. Mara lifted one hand. Slowly, he stopped. Every instinct demanded that he pick up his daughter and summon every healer in the palace. But Ivy's frightened eyes were fixed on him. Mara kept her voice low. She may be reacting to the mist tonic. Do not touch her until she knows it is you. Ronan lowered himself to one knee. Ivy. She whimpered. It is Papa. Her breathing remained uneven. Ronan looked at Mara. What do I do? The question cost him more than any order ever had. Mara's expression softened. Stay where she can see you. He did. Do not ask her to stop crying. He nodded. Tell her she is not in trouble. Ronan looked at his daughter. You are not in trouble. Ivy's eyes filled with tears. No one will hold you down, he continued. No one will make you drink anything. Her breathing slowed slightly. Ronan extended one hand across the carpet. He did not command her to take it. He waited. Seconds passed. Then Ivy crawled forward and placed her small fingers in his palm. Ronan closed his hand around hers as carefully as if she were made of thin glass. Mara watched him lower his head. The scarred king looked shaken. Not by war, not by poison, by the discovery that his daughter had needed a promise of safety inside her own nursery. Gideon entered quietly with an older female healer named Dr. Celine Ward. She carried no restraints and no medicine case. Mara had requested both conditions. Celine examined Ivy on the floor, while Ronan remained beside her. The child had a mild fever and withdrawal tremors, but her breathing and heart were stable. She needs water, food, rest, and observation, Celine said. No forced medication. Ronan looked toward Mara. You expected this. I feared it. You should have told me. I did not know if you would believe me. The words were gentle. They still wounded. Before Ronan could respond, Celine placed a drop of the confiscated tonic on a clean porcelain dish. Mara removed one moonbell petal from the small pouch at her waist. Ronan noticed she had preserved it carefully. She laid it against the liquid. At first, nothing happened. Corvin's claim almost seemed correct. Then dark veins slowly appeared along the petal's white surface. Not as quickly as the flowers on Ronan's collar, but unmistakably. Celine leaned closer. This is a diluted contaminant. Silver dusk? Gideon asked. Possibly. I need proper testing. Ronan stared at the darkening petal. A high dose had been placed on his ceremonial collar. Low doses had been given to his children day after day. Not enough to kill them. Enough to weaken them. Enough to delay their wolf instincts. Enough to make their father believe they were fragile. Caleb walked toward the dish and sniffed. Then he turned toward the open nursery door. Malrek was no longer there. Only the faint scent of clove oil remained in the corridor. Ronan looked down at the tonic bottle. A memory returned without warning. 4 years earlier, on the night Alara died, he had entered her private chamber and found her cloak folded over a chair. The room had smelled of lavender, cold rain, and cloves. His hand tightened around the edge of the table. Mara saw the color leave his face. What is it? She asked. Ronan lifted his eyes toward her. For the first time, she saw something more dangerous than anger in them. Recognition. The night my Luna died, he said quietly. This scent was in her room. Outside the nursery, somewhere deep within Thornkeep, a bell began to ring. The medical archive was on fire. Smoke moved through the eastern corridor in dark waves as servants ran from the medical wing. Guards shouted for water. Heavy boots struck the stone floors, and somewhere beyond the nursery, glass shattered. Ronan rose at once. Gideon, lock down the nursery. Captain Gideon reached for the door. No one enters without my permission, Ronan continued. Not a healer, not a council member. No one. Mara stood beside Ivy, who was still holding her father's hand. What about the archive? Mara asked. Ronan looked toward the smoke gathering beneath the distant ceiling. The guards will handle it. The original medicine records are inside. I know. If those records burn, I know. His voice came out sharper than he intended. Ivy flinched. Ronan saw it immediately. The anger left his face, replaced by something quieter and more painful. He lowered himself again and touched his daughter's hair with careful fingers. I am not angry with you. Ivy studied him uncertainly. Ronan had commanded armies without hesitation, yet those 6 words seemed to require more courage than any battlefield order. Mara watched his hand remain near Ivy's shoulder until the child relaxed. Then Ronan stood and faced Gideon. Keep them safe. Finn frowned. We're coming. No. There may be danger. That is why you are staying here. Finn folded his arms. That does not seem fair. It is not meant to be fair. Mara placed one hand on Finn's shoulder. Kings are often very disappointing before lunch. Ronan turned toward her. Mara's expression became innocent. I was comforting him. You have an unusual method. It has kept me alive so far. For one brief moment, the corner of Ronan's mouth shifted. Then another crash sounded from the medical wing. He looked toward Mara's injured hand, still wrapped in the cloth he had given her. You will remain here as well. Her eyebrows rose. Because I am safe here? Because someone has already tried to poison my children, burn my records, and possibly frame you. That was a very long way to say yes. Ronan stepped closer. The humor faded from Mara's face when she saw the seriousness in his eyes. This is not a game, he said quietly. I know. Then stop treating your life as though it is worth less than everyone else's. The words caught her off guard. For years, people had spoken about Mara's usefulness, her silence, her mother's disgrace, and the inconvenience of keeping an unwanted Omega in royal service. No one had spoken about the value of her life. She looked down before he could see how deeply the words had reached. I will stay, she said. Ronan nodded once and turned away. He reached the door before Mara called after him. Your Majesty. He looked back. The archive fire started minutes after you ordered the record sealed. I noticed. Then, whoever started it was already close enough to hear your command. Ronan's expression hardened. And close enough to know which records frightened them. He left with Gideon and 4 guards. The nursery doors closed behind him. Only then did Mara realize he had left 2 additional guards outside. Not to imprison her, to protect her. The archive fire was controlled before it reached the western shelves. That was the only good news. By the time Ronan entered, black water covered the floor. Burned paper floated through it like ruined feathers. Smoke clung to the shelves and filled every breath with ash. An archive clerk sat against the wall while a guard wrapped cloth around his bleeding head. Ronan stopped in front of him. What happened? The clerk struggled to focus. I heard the lock open, Your Majesty. Who entered? I did not see. Someone struck me from behind. Gideon examined the iron cabinet at the back of the room. Its door had been forced open. Which records were kept here? Ronan asked. The clerk's face went pale. Royal medical accounts. Restricted formulas. Nursery treatments. All of them? No. The clerk swallowed. Only records older than 3 years. Elora had died 4 years earlier. Ronan stared at the burned cabinet. The fire had not been meant to destroy the current tonic formula. It had been meant to erase the beginning. Footsteps entered behind him. Malrek appeared through the smoke with a wet cloth covering his mouth. My king, thank the moon you are unharmed. Ronan did not answer. Malrek looked around the ruined archive. A terrible accident. Gideon straightened. The fire began inside a locked cabinet. Then perhaps a lamp fell during the clerk's struggle. There was no lamp inside the cabinet, Ronan said. Malrek became quiet. Dr. Corvin stood several steps behind him, guarded by 2 soldiers. His face was gray beneath the soot. Ronan turned toward the healer. Where is the original formula for my children's tonic? Corvin looked at the burned shelves. It may have been destroyed. The current formula would not be stored with 4-year-old records. Corvin opened his mouth. No answer came. Malrek stepped forward. The healer has experienced a difficult morning. It would be wise to question him when he is calmer. Ronan's gaze moved slowly toward the Chancellor. Why? Malrek frowned. Why what? Why are you speaking for him? The smoke seemed to thicken between them. Malrek folded his gloved hands. I am speaking for the stability of the court. My children were drugged. We do not yet know that. My cloak was poisoned by someone who may be trying to turn you against your council. Ronan stepped closer. Then, that person is succeeding. Malrek lowered his voice. Grief can make old memories appear connected when they are not. Ronan's wolf stirred beneath his skin. The scent of cloves rose from Malrek's gloves. For 4 years, Ronan had accepted that scent as part of the Chancellor's presence. Clean, familiar, respectable. Now it smelled like a warning he had been too blind to recognize. Gideon approached with a half-burned ledger. This was found beneath the cabinet. Most of the pages had been destroyed. One line remained visible beside a faded royal seal. Moonbell testing suspended, by order of the High Chancellor. Ronan looked toward Malrek. The Chancellor's expression did not change. That garden was connected to the Luna's death, he said. Every dangerous practice associated with it was stopped. Moonbells are not dangerous, Corvin whispered. Everyone turned. Malrek's head moved very slightly. Corvin immediately lowered his eyes. Ronan stepped toward him. What did you say? The healer's lips trembled. I said the records may not be reliable after so many years. That is not what you said. Corvin looked at Malrek. The Chancellor smiled without warmth. Careful, Doctor. Smoke can confuse the mind. Ronan understood the warning even if Corvin refused to acknowledge it. Someone had frightened the healer more deeply than his king ever had. Place Corvin under guard, Ronan ordered. Separate room. No visitors. Malrek's eyes sharpened. And the Chancellor? Gideon asked. Ronan held Malrek's gaze. The Chancellor will return to the council chamber. Malrek bowed. As you command. He left without argument. That worried Ronan more than resistance would have. By late afternoon, the smoke had cleared from the nursery corridor. Ronan returned to find Finn sitting under a table, Caleb arranging flower petals by size, and Ivy asleep with her head in Mara's lap. Mara was leaning against the side of a chair, her eyes closed. She looked exhausted. A loose strand of hair rested across her cheek. One hand remained protectively near Ivy's shoulder, even in sleep. Ronan stood in the doorway longer than necessary. The room had become quiet, but not with fear. It was the quiet of safety. Caleb noticed him first. He placed one finger against his lips. Ronan, who had silenced entire war councils with a glance, obeyed a 5-year-old child. He entered without making a sound. Finn crawled out from beneath the table. Did you catch the fire? The fire is not a person. Finn considered that. Did you catch whoever made it? Not yet. Then the fire is winning. Ronan looked at him. Temporarily. That answer appeared to satisfy the boy. Mara opened her eyes. The moment she saw Ronan, she tried to sit straighter. Ivy shifted in her lap, and Mara froze to avoid waking her. What survived? She whispered. A partial ledger. Was the tonic formula there? No. Disappointment crossed her face. Ronan reached into his coat and handed her the burned page Gideon had recovered. Mara read the remaining line. Her gaze stopped on the order suspending Moonbell testing. My mother said Luna Ilara kept copies of important remedies herself. Where? In the Moon House. Ronan went still. He had known they would have to return there. Knowing did not make the thought easier. Mara saw the change in his expression. You do not have to go inside today. Yes, I do. The records will still be there tomorrow. The person burning them may not wait. His voice was steady. Only his hand betrayed him, closing slowly at his side. Mara understood then that Ronan was not afraid of poison flowers or hidden enemies. He was afraid of walking into a room that still remembered his wife. She did not tell him to be brave. Powerful men heard that too often from people who did not understand what bravery cost. Instead, Mara carefully shifted Ivy into Agnes's arms and stood. I will go with you. Ronan looked at her bandaged hand. You are injured. It is a scratch. You called it barely worth the drama before it started bleeding again. Mara blinked. You remembered that? His expression became unreadable. I remember details that may be relevant. To the investigation? Of course. Mara hid a small smile. Then my injured hand is fortunate to be so politically important. Ronan looked away first. The main doors of the glass moonhouse opened with a long, aching groan. Cold air drifted from within. Ronan stood at the threshold. Dust covered the stone paths. Dead vines hung from cracked arches. Pale afternoon light passed through the broken glass ceiling and touched the empty planting beds. The scent reached him. Lavender, winter soil, Alara. His breath stopped. For one terrible moment, he was no longer a king. He was a husband arriving too late, holding a silver ribbon while someone told him his Luna would never wear it again. Mara entered without speaking. She crossed the room and opened one of the narrow windows. Fresh air moved through the garden. Ronan looked at her. "I thought it might help," she said. He nodded. "Thank you." The words were quiet. Mara did not pretend they meant less than they did. Finn, Caleb, and Ivy had been allowed to follow with Agnes and 4 guards. They hurried toward the old children's corner. Finn stopped beside a small cactus. Its needles leaned in every direction. He stared at it seriously. "I am naming this one Chancellor." Mara crouched beside him. "Why?" "It hurts people who get close and still expects water." Gideon coughed into his fist. Ronan turned away, but Mara saw the brief movement of his shoulders. He was laughing. Silently, she smiled before she could stop herself. Ronan noticed. Their eyes met across the dusty garden. For a second, the cold room felt unexpectedly warm. Then Caleb called from the planting table. "I found something." Beneath a layer of dirt lay a leather journal marked with Alara's silver wolf. Ronan opened it with trembling hands. Most pages contained drawings, planting dates, and notes about the children. Near the center, one sentence had been written in darker ink. "When Moonbell darkens, look not at the flower but at the hand that fears it." Several pages after it had been torn away, Mara searched beneath the table and found a narrow metal latch. A hidden compartment opened. Inside rested a silver box. Ronan lifted the lid. There was a letter within, addressed in Alara's handwriting. "To Ronan, if I cannot tell you myself." His face lost all color. Mara stepped closer but did not touch him. Ronan broke the seal. The first lines described missing quantities of silver dust purchased through nursery accounts. Alara wrote that someone in the council had begun moving poison through royal medicine shipments. At the bottom of the page, one name had been written. Before Ronan could read it, a heavy sound came from the entrance. The main doors slammed shut. The locking bar dropped into place from the outside. Every guard turned. Smoke began to rise through the cracks beneath the potting room door. Mara looked toward the children. Ronan folded Alara's letter and placed it inside his armor. Then fire appeared behind the old glass walls. Someone had waited 4 years for the truth to be found, and now they intended to bury everyone who had found it. Smoke rolled across the floor of the glass moonhouse. The children began coughing before the flames reached the main garden. Ronan moved instantly. "Gideon, take Finn and Caleb." The captain grabbed both boys beneath their arms. Finn kicked once. "Put me down. I can run." "You are wearing 1 boot," Gideon said. "That has not stopped me all day." Caleb clutched his cloth wolf against his chest. His eyes remained fixed on the fire spreading behind the cracked glass wall. Agnes lifted Ivy, but the little girl twisted toward Ronan. "Papa, I am here." Ronan reached for her. A wooden beam fell between them. Sparks exploded across the stone path. Ivy screamed. Mara ran before anyone could stop her. She pulled Ivy from Agnes's arms and covered the child with her own body as part of the glass roof broke above them. "Mara!" Ronan roared. A jagged piece of glass struck Mara's shoulder. Pain tore through her. She stumbled but did not release Ivy. Ronan crossed the burning path in 2 strides. He swept Ivy into one arm and caught Mara around the waist with the other. Blood spread across the back of her gray dress. His wolf surged beneath his skin. For one terrible second, the world narrowed to the scent of her blood. Mara looked at him through the smoke. "I am all right. You are bleeding. I have noticed. This is not the time for humor. It rarely asks permission." Another section of the ceiling groaned. Ronan tightened his arm around her. The main doors were still barred from outside. Flames had reached the eastern wall, blocking the direct path to them. Gideon drew his sword. "We can break the doors." "No," Mara said. Ronan looked at her sharply. "The glass arch above the entrance is already cracking. If you strike the doors, it may fall on the children." Gideon stared toward the ceiling. She was right. Ronan's gaze moved through the smoke. "The service passage." Mara nodded. "Behind the potting room. You came through it before." "Yes. Lead us." She tried to step away from him. Ronan did not release her. "I can walk," she insisted. "You can barely stand. I am being held by an Alpha King in front of half the royal guard. Pride is doing most of the work." Despite the fire, Gideon made a sound suspiciously close to a laugh. Ronan looked at him. The captain immediately focused on the children. Mara pressed one hand against her shoulder and led them toward the rear of the moonhouse. Ronan stayed beside her, carrying Ivy against his chest. The little girl had buried her face beneath his chin. Every few steps, Ronan looked down to make sure she was breathing. Mara noticed. There had been a time when she believed the Alpha King possessed no softness at all. Now she understood that his softness had not died. It had simply been locked behind fear for so long that even his children had forgotten where to find it. They reached the potting room. The hidden wooden panel was closed. Mara pushed against it. Nothing happened. "It is stuck," she said. Smoke gathered above them. Finn coughed into his sleeve. Ronan passed Ivy to Agnes. "Move back." His claws lengthened. Dark veins appeared beneath the skin of his hands. As his wolf strength rose, he drove both palms into the old panel. The wall shook. Once. Twice. The wood cracked but did not open. Mara saw a metal hook hidden beneath the planting table. "Wait." Ronan struck again. "Your Majesty." The panel groaned. "Ronan." He stopped. It was the first time she had used his name. The fire faded from his awareness for half a heartbeat. Mara pointed to the hook. "The latch." Ronan pulled it. The panel opened immediately. Finn stared up at him. "You were fighting a door that was not locked." Ronan's jaw tightened. It was poorly designed. Mara's face softened, despite the pain. "Of course." They entered the narrow passage. Gideon went first with the boys. Agnes followed with Ivy. Ronan stayed behind Mara while fire filled the potting room. The passage was barely wide enough for his shoulders. Halfway through, Mara's knees gave way. Ronan caught her before she struck the ground. "I can still walk," she whispered. "No." That sounded very royal. It was meant to. He lifted her into his arms. Mara stared at him. "You do realize I work in the laundry." "I am aware. People will talk." "Let them." The answer came too quickly. Both of them heard it. Mara looked away first, pretending the smoke had made her eyes water. Ronan carried her through the darkness, while flames consumed the place where his wife's memory had slept for 4 years. But the letter inside his armor remained safe. So did his children. So did Mara. For the first time since entering the moonhouse, Ronan allowed himself to believe the fire had failed. Cold evening air greeted them when they emerged into the eastern courtyard. Guards rushed forward with blankets and water. Ronan carried Mara past all of them. "My king," Gideon said carefully, "the healers are waiting. Dr. Celine only." Mara looked at him. "That sounded personal." "It is. I meant your dislike of the others." "So did I." Ronan did not set her down until they reached a small recovery chamber beside the nursery. Dr. Celine cut the blood-soaked fabric away from Mara's shoulder. The wound was deep, but the glass had missed the bone. "You were fortunate," Celine said. Mara glanced toward Ronan, who stood 3 steps away with his arms folded. "I have been told that before. Usually by people describing disasters." Celine cleaned the wound. Mara flinched. Ronan moved closer. "You said she would not need restraints." "She does not," Celine replied calmly. "But this will hurt." Mara looked at him. "You may wait outside." "No. I promise not to escape through another forbidden wall." "That promise has little value." She almost smiled. Celine pressed a cloth against the cut. Mara's face went pale. Ronan's hand closed around the back of a chair until the wood creaked. Celine glanced at it. "Your Majesty, the chair did nothing wrong." From the doorway, Finn whispered to Caleb, "That has never protected a chair before." Ronan looked over. The boys stood with Ivy between them. Agnes had tried to keep them in the nursery, but, apparently, 3 royal heirs had defeated one elderly nurse. Finn carried a crooked wreath. Caleb held a cup of water. Ivy carried a single moonbell with slightly burned petals. The children approached Mara's bed. Finn placed the wreath on the table. "So you remember we are still trouble." Mara looked at it. "I had not forgotten." Caleb gave her the water. Ivy climbed carefully onto the edge of the bed and placed the damaged flower near Mara's hand. Then she leaned against her without speaking. Ronan watched Mara's expression soften. A strange ache moved through him. It was not jealousy. Not exactly. But his children went to her without hesitation. They knew how to touch her, how to sit beside her, how to offer comfort. With him, they still waited for permission. Mara looked across the room and caught him watching. She shifted slightly, making room beside the bed. The invitation was small. Ronan understood it. He came closer. Ivy reached one hand toward him. This time, she did not look afraid. He took it. For several quiet moments, the 6 of them remained together around the narrow bed. No throne. No council. No one bowing. Just a wounded woman, 3 tired children, an old nurse, and a king learning that staying beside someone could matter as much as saving them. Gideon entered, carrying a leather pouch. "My king, we searched the outside of the moon house." Ronan's attention sharpened. "What did you find?" The captain emptied the pouch onto the table. A blackened metal key, a fragment of thick paper, and part of a brass lock stamped with the mark of the council archive. "The outer doors were locked with this," Gideon said. "It did not belong to the moon house." Ronan picked up the paper fragment. Most of the writing had burned away. One line remained. "Shipment S-17 nursery restoration supplies." Mara's face changed. "What is it?" Ronan asked. She looked toward Caleb. "The tonic bottle." Caleb pulled the cloth wolf closer. "There was a number beneath the royal medical seal," Mara said. "S-17. Gideon looked at the burned invoice. The same shipment code. Ronan reached inside his armor and removed Alara's letter. The edges had been protected by the silver box, but part of the final page had darkened from heat. He opened it carefully. The name at the bottom was still hidden beneath a burned fold. But the final paragraph remained readable. Ronan read aloud. "Miriam Vale found the discrepancy first. She believes Silverdusk is entering the palace under nursery accounts. If anything happens to me, she is not responsible. She tried to warn me." Mara stopped breathing. For 16 years, the kingdom had called her mother a traitor. For 16 years, Mara had carried the shame in silence. Now Luna Alara's own handwriting had spoken from the dead. "My mother was innocent," Mara whispered. Ronan looked at her. "Yes." Only one word. But it returned something the kingdom had stolen from her. Mara turned her face away as tears filled her eyes. She did not want the children to see her cry. Ronan moved closer. His hand lifted, then paused near her cheek. He did not touch her without permission. Instead, he placed Alara's letter into Mara's uninjured hand. She should have been heard. Mara's fingers closed around the page. "So should you?" Ronan added. Her eyes returned to his. The tenderness in his voice lasted only a moment, but it was enough to make the room feel strangely small. Then Gideon cleared his throat. "The council has gathered." Ronan stepped back. The king returned to his face, but not completely. Something gentler remained beneath it. High Chancellor Malrek stood at the center of the council chamber when Ronan entered. The elders had already taken their seats. They rose together. Malrek looked toward the blood on Ronan's sleeve. "My king, we feared the traitor had harmed you." Ronan stopped. "What traitor?" Malrek hesitated. "The person who set the fire. No one has been identified." Then I spoke poorly. "You rarely do." The chancellor held his gaze. Ronan placed the blackened key and the paper fragment on the council table. This lock came from the archive. Several elders exchanged glances. Malrek remained calm. The attacker may have stolen it. The shipment code matches my children's tonic. That proves only that someone used a nursery account. Someone with access to council funds. Malrek's expression hardened slightly. The kingdom is under strain. Perhaps the wisest course is to move the heirs from Thornkeep until the danger passes. Where? The North Tower. Ronan's eyes narrowed. The North Tower was not a nursery. It was an isolated stone fortress once used to confine royal wolves who could no longer control their transformations. My children are not prisoners. They are unstable. They are poisoned. We do not know that. The Moonbells reacted to their medicine. Flowers are not witnesses. No, Ronan said, but frightened men often are. Silence covered the chamber. Malrek's gloved fingers tightened. Ronan continued. You ordered Moonbell testing suspended 4 years ago. After your Luna died. Why? To prevent another tragedy. Or to prevent anyone from discovering what killed her. Several council elders lowered their eyes. Malrek stepped closer to the table. My king, grief is clouding your judgment. You survived today by chance. Your heirs nearly died. And now you are allowing a servant with a traitor's blood to influence the throne. Ronan's wolf rose beneath his skin. But he remained still. Mara Vale saved my daughter. And nearly led all 3 heirs into a burning ruin. The ruin was locked from outside. Malrek exhaled slowly. Then the council must act before your attachment to this woman compromises the succession. The heirs should be declared medically unfit until the silver dusk is removed from their blood. No one moved. Ronan watched him. Very carefully. We have not yet confirmed that the poison is silver dusk. Malrek's face changed. Only slightly, but Ronan saw it. So did Gideon. The Chancellor had named the poison in the Great Hall before testing. Now he had spoken as though he knew it remained inside the children's blood. Ronan leaned both hands against the council table. How do you know what is in them? Malrek said nothing. The silence stretched. Then Ronan removed Alara's letter from his coat. For the first time, true fear entered the Chancellor's scent. It was faint, buried beneath cloves and cold control. But Ronan had finally learned how to recognize it. He unfolded the letter. My Luna left a warning, he said. And someone tried to burn it before I could read the name. Malrek's eyes moved toward the page. That single glance told Ronan more than any confession could have. The Chancellor knew what Alara had written. Ronan folded the letter again. He was not ready to reveal how much had survived. Not yet. Tomorrow morning, Malrek said carefully, the council will review the fitness of the heirs. Ronan straightened. You seem very eager to remove my children from the succession. I am eager to protect the kingdom. No, Ronan replied. You are eager to protect something. He turned toward the doors. Behind him, Malrek spoke. You cannot save a kingdom by trusting every wounded woman who looks at you with kindness. Ronan stopped. Mara's tired face returned to his thoughts. The way she had shielded Ivy with her own body. The way she had opened a window when he could not breathe. The way she had offered him a place beside his children without demanding an apology first. He looked back at Malrek. Perhaps not. His voice became colder. But I am beginning to understand how easily a kingdom can be lost by trusting the wrong man. Ronan left the chamber. Malrek remained beside the council table, staring at the closed doors. For the first time in 4 years, the High Chancellor no longer looked like the most confident man in Thornkeep. And beneath his right glove, where the fallen Moonbell petal had touched him, a dark stain had begun spreading across his skin. The royal nursery had never been built for a man like Ronan Blackthorn. Everything inside it was too small. The chairs were too narrow. The beds barely reached his knees. Even the painted wolves along the walls looked cheerful enough to make the Alpha King suspicious of them. Yet shortly after sunset, Ronan entered carrying a folded blanket beneath one arm. Finn stared at him from the floor. Caleb stopped arranging wooden blocks. Ivy sat beside Mara near the fireplace, holding a strip of cloth while Mara repaired the torn wing of a stuffed bird. No one spoke. Ronan looked around the room. A small cot had been placed near the door. It was clearly intended for a guard or nurse. It was also at least 2 feet shorter than he was. Finn pointed at it. Is that where you are sleeping? Yes. You will not fit. I will manage. Finn examined him with great seriousness. Your feet will be outside. I am aware. Someone might steal them. Ronan removed his cloak. Who would steal the feet of an Alpha King? Finn shrugged. Someone who needs very large shoes. Mara lowered her head over the stuffed bird. Her shoulders trembled. Ronan looked at her. You may laugh. I was not laughing. You are doing it again. Doing what? Pretending not to. Mara carefully pulled the needle through the cloth. I have discovered that laughing at kings can be dangerous. Only when the king is not wearing flowers. Her hands stopped. Ronan seemed to realize what he had said. Finn grinned. Caleb looked between them. Ivy's small mouth curved into a smile. Mara returned her attention to the toy. The flowers improved your judgment. They nearly revealed my murderer. Useful and decorative. Ronan walked toward the fireplace. The light touched the silver beginning to appear near his temples. He still wore black, but without the crown and ceremonial cloak, he looked less like the ruler feared across the northern kingdoms. He looked like a tired man who had not spent a night near his children in far too long. Mara noticed the shadows beneath his eyes. She also noticed he had returned without eating. She did not mention it immediately. Ronan noticed the bandage on her shoulder beneath the loose fabric of her dress. He did not mention that immediately either. Both of them were becoming very skilled at pretending not to watch each other. Agnes entered with a dinner tray. She placed bowls of stew, bread, and warm milk on the table. There are only 5 places, she said. Finn counted everyone. There are 6 of us. Agnes looked at Mara. I can eat in the service kitchen. Ivy caught her sleeve. No. The single word was quiet, but firm. Mara knelt beside her. I will only be down the hall. Ivy shook her head. Caleb moved his bowl to one side. You can sit beside me. Finn pointed toward Ronan. Papa can eat standing. Ronan looked at his son. Why would I eat standing? Because you are very tall. That is not how chairs work. Finn glanced at the broken chair still waiting near the wall. It was how the last one worked. Mara pressed her lips together. Ronan moved one of the larger chairs from beside the fireplace and placed it at the table himself. You will stay, he told Mara. She looked at him. Was that a royal command? No. Then what was it? His gaze held hers for one quiet second. A request. The word felt different coming from him. Softer. More personal than an order. Mara sat beside Caleb. Ronan took the seat across from her. During the first several minutes, the children ate silently. Ronan's presence changed the room even when he said nothing. Finn sat straighter. Caleb kept looking down. Ivy held her spoon with both hands. Ronan saw it. His own children were trying to avoid making mistakes in front of him. Mara tore a piece of bread. Finn, she said, your father appears to believe stew should be threatened before it is eaten. Ronan looked at the spoon in his hand. Finn studied him. You are staring at it. I am thinking. About the stew? About the investigation. Mara sighed. That must be disappointing for the stew. Caleb smiled into his bowl. Ronan glanced at Mara. Do you always speak this much during meals? Only when everyone looks as though they are attending a funeral. Finn pointed at Ronan. He looks like that during breakfast too. 1. I do not. All 3 children looked at him. Ronan slowly lowered his spoon. Apparently, I do. The tension around the table eased. Finn began telling a long and somewhat unreliable story about a mouse he believed lived behind the nursery wall. Caleb corrected nearly every detail. Ivy listened while dipping bread into her stew. Ronan did not speak much. He listened. That alone changed something. When Finn forgot a word, Ronan waited instead of finishing the sentence. When Caleb rearranged the bread slices into equal groups, Ronan did not tell him to stop playing with food. When Ivy leaned against Mara's arm, he did not look away from the sight. He had spent years believing his children needed protection from enemies. He had never realized they also needed protection from the silence surrounding him. Mara reached for her cup. Pain crossed her face. It vanished quickly. Not quickly enough. Ronan placed his spoon down. Your shoulder. It remains attached. That was not my question. You did not ask one. His eyes narrowed. Mara gave him a tired smile. It hurts a little. How much is a little? Less than being accused of treason. Finn looked up. That does not sound little. It was a poor comparison. Ronan stood. Mara watched him cross toward a cabinet and return with the salve Dr. Celine had left. He placed it beside her. You should apply this after dinner. I can manage. I know. The answer surprised her. There was no doubt in his voice. No assumption that she was helpless. Only concern. He moved back to his chair, but Mara noticed he had placed the jar close enough that she would not need to lift her injured arm. Her chest tightened. It was such a small thing. That made it harder to ignore. After dinner, Ronan discovered that reading to children required a different kind of courage. Finn selected a book about a young wolf who lost his way in a snowstorm. Ronan opened it. He read the title, then the publisher's mark, then the warning printed inside the cover. Not recommended for pups under 3 due to small decorative pieces. Finn frowned. That is not the story. It was written on the page. Mara sat on the carpet beside Ivy's bed. You may safely skip the legal notices, Your Majesty. Ronan looked at her over the book. Are you instructing your king again? I am protecting the narrative. Finn nodded. The story is dying. Ronan turned the page. He began again. His voice was deep and calm, the same voice that had once carried across battlefields. It made the simple tale sound as though the lost pup were marching toward war. When the character entered a dark cave, Ronan paused. The pup should not have entered without checking the wind. Mara leaned against the bedpost. He is 4. That does not make the cave safer. It makes the lesson somewhat forgiving. Ronan returned to the story. By the middle, Caleb had moved closer. By the end, Finn's head rested against Ronan's arm. Ivy watched her father with wide, thoughtful eyes. When Ronan closed the book, Finn frowned. Again. It is late. You read the warnings too long. That was part of the book. It was not a good part. Mara laughed softly. This time, she did not hide it. Ronan looked at her. The firelight rested warmly across her face. Her brown hair had loosened from its braid, and the weariness in her eyes made her look softer than she had in the great hall. Something inside him became painfully still. He wondered what her laugh sounded like when she was not frightened, injured, or surrounded by royal accusations. He wondered how often she laughed when he was not there. The thought displeased him for reasons he refused to examine. A young guard appeared at the door, carrying another book. Miss Vale, he said, you left this in the servants' hall. Mara smiled at him. Thank you, Thomas. The guard's face reddened. It was nothing. Ronan's gaze shifted toward him. Thomas bowed so quickly he nearly dropped the book. You may leave, Ronan said. The guard disappeared. Mara looked toward the door. He only returned my book. I saw. You frightened him. He is a royal guard. That does not prevent fear. Apparently, it encourages it. Ronan picked up the first book. He was staring at you. Mara blinked. Was he? Yes. She studied Ronan's face. A small, knowing smile appeared. Perhaps he admired my bandage. Ronan opened the book again with more force than necessary. It is not especially impressive. I will try to be wounded more elegantly next time. There will not be a next time. The words came out low and immediate. Mara's smile faded. Ronan looked at her. Neither spoke for a moment. It was not a command. It was a wish. A foolish, impossible wish from a man who knew better than most that danger did not ask permission. Mara lowered her eyes. I will do my best. It was the closest promise she could give him. Near midnight, Ivy began to cry. The sound pulled Ronan awake before he had truly fallen asleep. He rose from the small cot, his bare feet touching the cold floor. As Finn had predicted, his legs had extended far beyond the blanket. Mara was already beside Ivy's bed. The little girl had curled against the wall, shaking beneath the covers. No medicine, Ivy whispered. Please. No medicine, Mara said. You are safe. Ronan moved closer. Ivy saw him and drew back. He stopped. The rejection struck him with quiet force. Mara looked toward him. Sit down. He obeyed without argument. Ronan sat on the floor several feet from the bed. His children had seen armies kneel before him. Now their father sat beside a rug painted with smiling rabbits, waiting for one frightened little girl to decide whether he could come closer. Ivy's breathing remained uneven. Ronan placed his hands on his knees. I will not touch you unless you ask. She watched him. No one will bring the sweet medicine. Her eyes filled with tears. I should have known, he said. Mara did not correct him. He continued. I should have stayed. Ivy's lower lip trembled. Ronan's voice became rougher. I am sorry. The Alpha King had apologized to neighboring rulers when treaties required it. He had apologized to soldiers' families when battles took their sons. He had never apologized to his children. Not like this. Ivy slowly moved across the bed. She lowered one foot to the floor. Then the other. Ronan remained still. She walked toward him and climbed into his lap. His arms closed around her carefully. Ivy pressed her face against his chest. Ronan shut his eyes. Mara watched his hand move over his daughter's hair. Slow, protective, uncertain, as though he were learning the shape of something he had always loved but had been too afraid to hold. After several minutes, Ivy's breathing settled. Ronan looked at Mara over the child's head. Thank you. I did nothing. You stayed. Mara's expression softened. Sometimes that is not nothing. Their eyes remained together in the dim light. The room had become quiet again. But this silence was different. It held trust, warmth, and something neither of them was ready to name. Mara noticed a white moonbell petal tangled near Ronan's ear. Finn must have placed it there while his father slept. She lifted her hand, then stopped. Ronan saw the movement. What? There is something in your hair. He raised one hand. Other side. He tried again. Mara bit back a smile. May I? Ronan lowered his hand. She leaned closer. Her fingers brushed the dark hair near his temple as she removed the petal. The touch lasted less than a second. It felt far longer. Ronan looked at her. Mara's breath caught. She held the petal between them. Your reputation survived, she whispered. Barely. Neither moved away immediately. Then footsteps thundered through the hallway. Gideon entered with 6 armed guards. His face carried no trace of humor. Ronan rose, still holding Ivy. What happened? The captain looked toward Mara. We searched Miss Vale's room. Mara stood slowly. Why? A servant reported seeing someone enter after the Moonhouse fire. Gideon opened a leather evidence bag. Inside lay a vial of silver dusk, a torn piece of Ronan's poisoned ceremonial collar, several pages written in Miriam Vale's hand, and a folded letter bearing Mara's name. Ronan's expression became unreadable. Mara stared at the objects. I have never seen that vial. Gideon's voice remained quiet. The cabinet was locked. Someone placed them there. The key was found in your apron. Mara's hand moved toward the hook where her apron hung. The pocket had been cut and carefully sewn closed again, just as Caleb's toy had been. Malrek appeared behind the guards. His timing was too perfect. Your Majesty, he said, we can no longer ignore what she is. Finn climbed from his bed. Caleb moved beside him. Ivy tightened her arms around Ronan's neck. Mara looked at Ronan. The warmth from only moments earlier vanished beneath fear. Not fear that he would hurt her. Fear that he would believe the lie. Ronan looked from the evidence to the woman who had carried his daughter through fire, the woman whose mother had been accused by the same court, the woman his children trusted more deeply than anyone in Thornkeep. Arrest her, Malrek said. Ronan's eyes turned cold. I did not give that order. Malrek lowered his head. Then give it now. The nursery held its breath. Ronan slowly placed Ivy in Agnes's arms. He stepped between Mara and the guards. For one hopeful second, she thought he had chosen her. Then he turned and held out his hand. Mara, he said quietly, give me your wrists. Pain crossed her face. She understood. If the guards seized her, the children would panic. If she offered herself to him, they might believe she would return. Mara placed her hands in his. Ronan fastened the iron restraints himself, keeping them loose around her injured wrist. His fingers lingered for the briefest moment. "I will find the truth," he whispered, so only she could hear. Mara looked into his eyes. "You may not like what it costs. I have already paid too much for lies." The guards began leading her toward the door. Ivy cried out. Finn tried to follow. Caleb stood frozen beside the bed. Malrek watched with quiet satisfaction. Then he turned toward Agnes. "The heirs must be moved to the North Tower before sunrise." Ronan's head snapped toward him. "No." Malrek smiled faintly. "The council has already begun the succession review, my king." From somewhere above Thornkeep, the great iron bells began to ring. Not the alarm for fire, not the call for war. The bells announcing that the royal heirs had been declared unfit for the throne. Each strike rolled through the nursery like a judgment. Finn covered his ears. Caleb stood motionless beside the bed, clutching his repaired cloth wolf so tightly that its mismatched stitches pulled against the fabric. Ivy stared toward the windows. "What does that bell mean?" Finn asked. No one answered. Malrek's expression remained calm. "The council has begun the succession review." Ronan stepped toward him. "My children have not been examined by an independent healer. The emergency charter does not require delay when the royal bloodline presents a threat to the kingdom. They are 5 years old. They are heirs. They are my children." Malrek lowered his head, performing respect without feeling any of it. "And that is why your judgment cannot be considered impartial." The alpha inside Ronan rose so violently that the guards nearest him shifted backward. Mara felt the change even with iron restraints around her wrists. His anger filled the nursery, dark and sharp, but beneath it was something far more painful. Fear. Not fear for his throne. Fear that he had already failed his children too many times to stop what was happening now. Mara wanted to tell him that Malrek was forcing him to choose too quickly. She wanted to remind him of the poison tonic, Alara's letter, and the Moonhouse fire. But the evidence from her room rested in Gideon's hands. A vial of silver dusk, a piece of the poisoned collar, her mother's notes, a letter carrying Mara's name. Every object had been placed carefully enough to turn truth into something that resembled guilt. Ronan looked toward Gideon. "Take Mara to the lower questioning chamber." Finn rushed in front of her. "No." Caleb joined him. "You said she would stay where you could see her." Ronan's face tightened. "That was before evidence was found in her room." "It is not hers," Finn said. Malrek glanced at the boy. "And how would you know?" Finn lifted his chin. "Because she hides biscuits, not poison." Despite everything, Mara nearly laughed. Malrek did not. Ronan crouched before his sons. "I need you to return to bed." "We are not tired," Finn said. "You were asleep 10 minutes ago." That was before treason. Mara closed her eyes for a moment. Only Finn could say the word treason, as though it were an inconvenient change in the evening schedule. Ronan placed one hand on the boy's shoulder. "No one is taking Mara away to punish her." Malrek spoke from behind him. "Not yet." Ronan turned slowly. The temperature in the room seemed to fall. "If you speak over me again," he said, "you will discover how little the succession review protects you." Malrek bowed. Mara saw satisfaction hidden beneath the gesture. He wanted Ronan angry. He wanted guards frightened. He wanted the council to hear that the king had threatened his own chancellor while defending the daughter of a convicted traitor. Every burst of rage became another stone in the prison Malrek was building around him. Mara stepped forward. The chains between her wrists made a soft metallic sound. "Your Majesty." Ronan looked at her. She kept her voice gentle. "The children should not watch this." Something wounded passed through his eyes. He knew she was right. Again. He stood and gave Gideon a nod. The captain reached for Mara's arm, but Ronan's hand moved first. Not the injured side. Gideon changed position without comment. Mara noticed. Even now, with poisoned evidence against her, Ronan remembered which shoulder had been cut by glass. The concern was small, quiet. almost hidden beneath his authority. It made leaving harder. Ivy slipped from Agnes's arms and ran toward Mara. She wrapped both arms around Mara's waist. The guards froze. Mara could not embrace her properly, with her wrists bound. She lowered herself instead. I need you to stay with your brothers. Ivy shook her head. I will come back. The promise felt dangerous the moment Mara spoke it. She did not know whether she would be allowed to keep it. Ivy looked, Papa? Ronan's face changed. The question was not truly a question. The little girl was asking whether his word could still keep someone safe. Ronan knelt beside her. She will not be harmed. Malrek's eyes moved toward him. Mara saw the calculation. Another promise for the Chancellor to use against the king. Ivy slowly released her. Mara rose. As Gideon led her toward the door, she looked back once. Ronan stood with all 3 children gathered near him. He did not look like the most powerful alpha in the north. He looked like a man watching another piece of his home being taken away. The lower questioning chamber was colder than the eastern room. No fire burned in the narrow hearth. Water dripped somewhere behind the walls, each drop echoing through the silence. Mara sat at a long wooden table. Her wrists had been fastened to an iron ring. Ronan stood near the only window, though the glass showed nothing except darkness. Gideon remained by the door. Malrek sat opposite Mara with the evidence arranged before him. The Chancellor unfolded the letter bearing her name. Shall I read it? Mara looked at Ronan. He had not met her eyes since entering the chamber. Read it, he said. Malrek began. The Blackthorn bloodline took my mother from me. The king will feel what it is to watch his family weakened, while no one believes him. When the children are removed, the throne will finally understand what it created. Finn's cloth wolf was not in the room. Neither were the children's quiet voices or Mara's gentle humor. Without them, the words sounded darker, more believable. Malrek placed the letter down. The handwriting resembles yours. It is not mine. The signature is yours. It was copied. The vial was found beneath your bed. I did not place it there. The key to the cabinet was sewn into your apron. The pocket had been opened and stitched again. Malrek looked toward Ronan. How convenient that a royal laundry worker recognizes altered stitching. Mara's fears sharpened. He was using her own skill against her. Ronan finally turned from the window. You hid information from me. Mara looked at him. I preserved evidence. You knew your mother suspected Malrek. Malrek's face remained composed. Mara held Ronanskaze. She never said his name directly. But you believed it. I feared it. And you said nothing. I had a moonbell petal, a scent, and a dead woman's warning. Your court executed my mother with more evidence than that. The pain in her voice entered the room before she could soften it. Ronan's jaw tightened. I did not order her execution. No. You were young. You were at war. Malrek's eyes flickered with satisfaction. Mara saw it and hated herself for allowing emotion to feed him. She lowered her voice. But you trusted the people who did. Ronan moved closer to the table. And now you decided what I could be trusted to know. I decided I would not accuse a man beside your throne until I could prove it. You entered a forbidden garden, treated my children without authority, and kept evidence of poison hidden. I did not treat them with secret medicine. You withheld their tonic. I delayed 1 dose after Ivy became sick. Nurse Agnes used the emergency rule. You should have come to me. Mara stared at him. When? The questions stopped him. When you returned from the border and ordered the kingdom to fear you? When every servant lowered their head because one wrong word could be called rebellion? When guards believed letting an Omega die would save the palace a meal? Ronan said nothing. Mara's chains trembled as her hands tightened. You taught everyone to fear you, she continued. Now the people beside your throne are using that fear to keep you alone. The words struck the deepest place in him. His scent changed. Grief. Anger. Shame. Malrek rose immediately. My king, this is manipulation. Ronan's gaze remained on Mara. You think you understand me? No. Her answer surprised him. Mara's voice softened. I think you've been in pain so long that you stopped noticing who benefited from it. For a moment, The questioning chamber held only the sound of dripping water. Ronan remembered Mara opening a window in the moon house because she saw that he could not breathe. He remembered her injured shoulder beneath ivy, her laughter beside the broken nursery chair, her fingers brushing his hair as she removed a flower petal. Then he looked at the silver dusk vial bearing the royal seal. Trust pulled him toward her. Evidence pulled him away. He hated that both felt real. Malrek placed both hands on the table. The succession hearing begins at dawn. The council requires a decision regarding the prisoner. She is not to be executed, Ronan said. My king. She is not to be touched without my direct order. Malrek's gaze sharpened. Your attachment is already compromising the throne. Ronan stepped toward him. And your eagerness to kill her is becoming difficult to misunderstand. The Chancellor smiled faintly. You saw the evidence. I also saw someone poison my children, burn 2 sets of records, and lock my family inside a fire. And you believe one servant could not have done those things? I believe you want me to decide before I have time to think. For the first time, Malrek's smile disappeared. Ronan turned toward Gideon. No one enters this chamber except you. Yes, my king. Ronan looked at Mara. She waited for reassurance. He wanted to give it. But the false letter remained on the table, and her silence about Malrek still hurt more than he wished to admit. I need the truth from you, he said. You have it. All of it? Mara hesitated. That hesitation wounded him. She saw it. There is one thing I did not tell you, she admitted. Malrek became very still. Ronan's voice hardened. What? My mother left a phrase inside the hem of her winter coat before she was taken. What phrase? Mara looked directly at Malrek. Beware the hand that smells sweet after touching death. The Chancellor's gloved fingers curled. Ronan noticed. Malrek gave a cold laugh. A frightened woman's riddle. Then why are you frightened? Mara asked. His expression changed. Only for a heartbeat. It was enough. Before Ronan could speak, bells rang from the northern side of Thornkeep. Not ceremonial bells. A nursery alarm. Ronan turned toward the door. Heavy footsteps approached. A guard entered without waiting for permission. My king, the heirs are being transferred. Ronan's face darkened. By whose order? The council's. I forbade it. The Chancellor's seal overruled the nursery command under the Emergency Succession Charter. Ronan looked at Malrek. The older man did not deny it. You kept me here, Ronan said. I attended a lawful questioning. You delayed me. I protected the kingdom while you defended a suspect. Ronan crossed the room so quickly the guard barely stepped aside. He stopped at the door and looked back toward Gideon. Keep Mara here. Mara rose as far as the chain allowed. Ronan. The use of his name stopped him. Do not let them separate the children. His eyes held hers. I will not. Then he was gone. The royal nursery had been torn apart. Blankets lay across the floor. A small table had overturned. The curtains Mara opened that morning had been ripped from one side. 2 guards were bleeding. Agnes sat beside the fireplace, holding one hand against her bruised temple. Ronan entered with his claws already extended. Where are they? Agnes looked up. They came with the Chancellor's seal. Where are my children? Finn and Caleb fought them. A sound that was almost pride entered her shaken voice. Finn bit a guard. Caleb broke a medicine bottle against another man's hand. Ronan searched the room. Finn stood behind the overturned table, breathing hard. Caleb was beside him. Ronan crossed to them. Are you hurt? Finn shook his head. Caleb's eyes were wide. They took Ivy. The words hollowed the room. Ronan's wolf tore against his skin. Who? A guard in a gray cloak, Caleb whispered. He said she needed special treatment. Which direction? Caleb pointed toward the northern corridor. Ronan moved toward the door. Finn grabbed his hand. Bring her back. Ronan looked down at his son. I will. This time, the promise did not frighten him. It gave his anger purpose. Near the nursery entrance, something pale lay crushed beneath a boot mark. A moonbell petal. Ronan lifted it carefully. One edge had turned black. The scent of clove oil clung to it. Gideon hurried into the nursery, holding a roll of parchment. My king. Ronan did not look away from the northern corridor. Not now. You need to see this. The captain opened the parchment across the overturned table. It was a guard log. At the top was the date of the Moonhouse fire. At the bottom was Gideon's private verification mark. Ronan frowned. The council showed me this record an hour ago. No, Gideon said. They showed you a copy. He placed a second parchment beside it. The names, times, and patrol routes were different. One report stated no guard had entered the eastern servant halls after sunset. The other showed 3 men carrying the High Chancellor's seal had entered Mara's quarters while she was in the nursery. Ronan's eyes moved to a final line. The same 3 guards had been assigned to transfer Ivy to the North Tower. Gideon lowered his voice. The official records were replaced. Ronan looked toward the passage leading north. Somewhere beyond the stone halls, his daughter was in the hands of the men who had planted poison in Mara's room. He closed his fingers around the blackened moonbell petal. Open Mara's cell, he ordered. Gideon stared at him. My king? Ronan's eyes burned with the full force of his wolf. Malrek wanted me to choose between the woman and the evidence. He turned toward the northern tower. He made one mistake. What mistake? Ronan's voice dropped into a growl. He gave me evidence that proves she was telling the truth. The key turned inside Mara's cell before the echo of Ronan's order had faded from the corridor. She rose from the narrow bench. Her wrists were still marked red where the restraints had rested. Her injured shoulder throbbed beneath its bandage, and cold from the stone walls had settled deep into her bones. Gideon entered first. Behind him came Ronan. Mara searched his face. The anger was still there, but it no longer pointed at her. It burned with purpose. Ronan carried 2 guard logs in one hand. He placed them on the small table between them. One is false, he said. The original shows 3 guards entering your quarters while you were in the nursery. Mara looked down at the names. She recognized none of them. They carried Malrek's seal, Ronan continued. The same men took Ivy toward the North Tower. The cold inside Mara changed. It was no longer discomfort. It was fear. Ivy is there? We believe so. Then why are we still standing here? Mara moved toward the door. Gideon stepped aside, but Ronan caught her gently by the uninjured arm. You are hurt. She is 5. I know. Then let go. Ronan did. Immediately. That surprised her more than resistance would have. He removed the key from Gideon's hand and opened the iron cuffs himself. The metal fell away from Mara's wrists. She rubbed the marks but did not thank him. Not yet. Ronan understood. Freedom given after wrongful imprisonment was not a gift. It was the correction of a mistake. The North Tower is heavily guarded, Gideon said. Malrek has claimed authority under the Emergency Succession Charter. Mara looked toward Ronan. The main stairs will be watched. Yes. There is another way. Ronan's eyes narrowed. How do you know? The Moonhouse service tunnel continues beneath the eastern foundations. My mother showed me part of it when I was a child. You never mentioned that. I never expected to use it to rescue a princess from the king's own chancellor. Gideon folded the false guard log. That is becoming an unfortunate pattern in this palace. Mara looked at Ronan. Finn and Caleb? Safe with Agnes and 4 guards I chose myself. Are you certain they can be trusted? Ronan did not answer immediately. It was the first time Mara had seen him hesitate over the word loyalty. I am certain Gideon trusts them, he said. The captain glanced at the king. Ronan met his gaze. And tonight that will have to be enough. Gideon bowed his head. Trust had once been something Ronan offered because a man held rank, wore a royal seal, or sat beside the throne. Now he was beginning to offer it carefully. To individuals. To choices. To proof. Mara walked toward the open cell door. Ronan remained where he was. She turned. Aren't you coming? His expression shifted. I have a council hearing in less than an hour. Mara stared at him. For a heartbeat, she believed the old king had returned. The one who chose the throne before the nursery. Then Ronan reached up and removed his black iron crown. He placed it on the prison table. The council can wait. Something inside Mara softened. You may lose your throne. My daughter may be frightened and alone. His voice remained calm. The throne was built to protect her. She was never born to protect it. Mara held his gauze. This was the choice Malrek had never expected him to make. A frightened king would have rushed to defend his authority. A grieving father went north. The hidden entrance lay beneath the ruined edge of the moonhouse. Smoke stains still covered the broken glass. Snow had begun falling through the open roof, settling softly across burned planting beds. Mara stopped when she saw the damage. Only days earlier, moonbells had grown along the inner path. Now blackened stems leaned beneath ash. Ronan noticed the grief in her expression. "It can be rebuilt," he said. She crouched and touched one charred leaf. "Some things do not grow back." "No." He stood beside her. "But perhaps what survives can be given more room." Mara looked up. The words were not only about flowers. Ronan looked away before she could answer. Gideon found the old iron ring hidden beneath the potting bench. Together, he and Ronan lifted the stone panel. A narrow staircase descended beneath the garden. Cold air rose from the darkness. Mara took a lantern. Ronan reached for it. "I will go first. I know the path. You also have one useful shoulder. And you have a habit of fighting doors." Gideon coughed to hide a laugh. Ronan gave Mara a long look. "That happened once. Finn will tell the story until he is 30. Finn may not live that long." Mara's eyebrows rose. Ronan sighed. "That was humor. It needs practice." Despite the danger, a quiet warmth passed between them. Mara entered the tunnel first. The passage was low and narrow. Roots pushed through the ceiling. Water ran along grooves in the stone, carrying the scent of soil and rust. Ronan stayed close behind her. Too close, perhaps. Whenever Mara slowed, his hand hovered near her waist without touching. Whenever the passage widened, he moved beside her instead of behind. Gideon followed several steps back, wisely pretending not to notice. After a time, Mara's breathing became uneven. Ronan heard it. "Your shoulder is worse. It is merely complaining. You should have stayed in the nursery. And let you search an underground tunnel alone? I have crossed enemy territory with fewer directions. You were lost for 2 days in the Red Pine campaign." Ronan stopped. "How do you know that?" "Laundry servants hear soldiers talk. I was tracking an enemy patrol. The soldiers said you followed the wrong river. The map was inaccurate." "Of course." Mara kept walking. Ronan stared at the back of her head. He had not heard anyone tease him about Red Pine in 20 years. Most men who remembered it valued their lives too highly. He should have been offended. Instead, he found himself remembering the brief smile on Mara's face. The tunnel felt less cold. They reached a fork. Mara lifted the lantern. One path smelled of old stone. The other carried a strong sweetness. Clove oil. Ronan's wolf stirred. "That way," he said. Mara shook her head. "The cloves are too strong. They were poured there to confuse your scent." Ronan looked toward her. "You are certain?" She closed her eyes and breathed slowly. Beneath the false sweetness was something softer. Lavender soap. Worm milk. The faint, frightened scent of a child. Mara pointed to the darker passage. "Ivy went this way." Ronan did not question her. He simply followed. That trust moved through Mara more deeply than she wanted it to. After several steps, she said, "There is something else you should know." Ronan's shoulders tightened. Gideon looked ahead, giving them the illusion of privacy. Mara reached into the lining of her dress and removed a tiny folded cloth. Inside lay a moonbell petal darkened by the children's tonic. "I kept this before the first bottle was confiscated." Ronan stared at it. "You hid more evidence." "Yes." "Why?" "Because records disappear in this palace." He could not argue. Mara continued. "My mother never wrote Malrek's name. But the night before she was taken, she told me the man responsible smelled sweet after every death. Cloves." "Yes. You should have trusted me." The moment the words left him, Ronan heard the unfairness in them. Mara stopped walking. "Should I have?" Her voice was not angry. That made the question harder. "When I first stood before you, You saw the daughter of a traitor. When I entered the moon house, you saw a trespasser. When poison was found in my room, you put chains on my wrists. I kept them loose. The defense sounded weak even to him. Mara looked down at the fading marks. You did. Ronan's jaw tightened. He had remembered her pain. He had still imprisoned her. I was wrong, he said. Mara looked up. Ronan Blackthorn did not hide behind his title. I should not have asked you to trust a king who had given you no reason to do so. The tunnel became still. I allowed my mother's name to remain stained because I trusted the council more than the truth in front of me. I allowed my children to fear their own home. And when the same lie was used against you, I nearly helped it succeed. Mara saw the cost of every word in his face. She had wanted an apology. Now that it stood before her, she did not know what to do with it. You came back, she said quietly. Too late. But you came back. Their eyes held in the lantern light. Ronan's hand moved toward hers. Mara's fingers shifted slightly. The space between them narrowed. Then a child cried somewhere above. Papa. Ronan turned toward the sound. Ivy. The moment disappeared. Neither mentioned it. They began to run. The hidden stairs opened behind an old tapestry in the north tower. Ronan pushed through first. A round chamber waited beyond it. Ivy sat on a narrow bed near the wall, pale and trembling. A leather restraint lay across the mattress beside her, but it had not been fastened. Corvin stood between her and the door. He held a medicine bottle in one hand. Ronan's claws extended. Step away from my daughter. Corvin flinched. I did not give it to her. Put it down. The healer slowly placed the bottle on the floor. Mara crossed the room. Ivy saw her and ran forward. Mara caught her with one arm, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. Ivy buried her face against Mara's neck. I knew you would come. Mara closed her eyes. So did I. Ronan stood beside them. Ivy reached for him as well. He lowered himself and gathered both of them closer without thinking. For one brief moment, Mara was pressed against his chest with Ivy between them. Ronan's arm rested around Mara's back. Her hand held the front of his coat. The contact was warm, protective, and far too natural. Gideon turned toward the door to give them privacy. Corvin stared at the floor. Ronan released Mara slowly. Too slowly. Then he faced the healer. Talk. Corvin's shoulders collapsed. Malrek ordered the tonic. Why? To delay the heir's first transformation. And my cloak? I prepared the solution. I did not place it there. Who did? Corvin looked toward the tower door. The Chancellor's steward. Mara's room? The guards planted everything. Luna Alara? Corvin's face crumpled. I was a junior healer. I changed the medical report after she died. Ronan became still. Did Malrek kill her? Corvin's mouth opened. Heavy footsteps sounded beyond the chamber. Dozens of them. Gideon drew his sword. They found us. Corvin rushed toward the inner door and locked it. Malrek knew I would break eventually. Ronan grabbed him by the collar. Then give me his records. There is a ledger beneath the council dais. Every Silver Dusk shipment. Every payment. Every false order. A voice thundered from the courtyard below. By authority of the Emergency Council, Ronan Blackthorn has abandoned his royal duty, freed a traitor, and abducted a declared unfit heir. Mara moved toward the narrow window. Soldiers surrounded the north tower. The council banners had been raised above them. Malrek's voice continued. At moonrise, the throne of Blackridge will be declared vacant. Ivy clung to Ronan's hand. He looked down at her. The child placed a crushed moon bell against the dark metal covering his shoulder. Ronan stared at it. Ivy gave the armor a worried look. It still needs help. Mara laughed softly despite the danger. Ronan looked at her. There was ash in her hair, exhaustion beneath her eyes, and blood beginning to mark her shoulder again. Yet, she was smiling. At him. Not at a king. At the man who had finally chosen to come home. The great bells of Thornkeep began to ring. Moonrise was less than an hour away. Ronan lifted Ivy into his arms. Then he looked toward Mara and Gideon. Malrek wants the kingdom to see me as a beast who abandoned his throne. Mara held his gaze. What will you do? Ronan's eyes shifted toward the distant lights of the great hall. I will give him the king he created. His voice hardened. Then I will show the kingdom the father he failed to destroy. The bells of Thornkeep were still ringing when Ronan entered the great hall without his crown. Every noble in Blackridge had gathered beneath the black stone pillars. Council elders filled both sides of the chamber. Royal guards stood in rigid lines near the walls. Representatives from the northern packs watched from the raised balconies, their faces tense beneath the silver torchlight. At the center of the hall, Malrek stood beside the empty throne. He wore Ronan's authority as though it had already become his own. A black council banner hung behind him. Upon the long table lay the emergency succession charter, 3 sealed medical reports, and the iron crown Ronan had left inside the prison wing. Malrek lifted one hand. The bells stopped. Silence swept through the hall. The former king has abandoned his lawful duty, he announced. He freed a suspected poisoner, removed an unfit heir from protective custody, and threatened the stability of this kingdom. The main doors opened. Ronan walked inside carrying Ivy against his chest. The child's small arms were wrapped around his neck. A crushed moonbell still rested against his shoulder armor. Mara walked beside him. Her dress was stained with soot and blood. One hand supported her injured shoulder, but her chin remained lifted. Gideon followed with Finn and Caleb. Corvin came last, guarded by 2 loyal soldiers. A murmur moved through the court. Malrek stared at Corvin. For the first time, his calm expression cracked. Only for a moment. Then it returned. "Seize them," he ordered. The guards nearest the doors hesitated. Malrek's voice sharpened. "That is a lawful command." Several soldiers moved forward. Ronan passed Ivy gently to Gideon. Then he stepped in front of Mara. The action was simple. Deliberate. His broad body blocked her from every drawn sword in the room. Mara looked at his back. He had stood before armies in that same way. Now he stood before his own kingdom for her. "You will not touch her," Ronan said. Malrek slowly descended the steps from the throne. "She is accused of poisoning you and your heirs. She was accused by men who placed the poison in her room." According to a frightened captain and a corrupted healer, Gideon's hand moved toward his sword. Ronan lifted one finger. The captain stopped. Malrek smiled faintly. "You see?" he said to the council. "He protects her before the kingdom. His judgment has been compromised." Ronan looked toward the nobles, gathered beneath the banners. "For 4 years, I allowed this court to confuse fear with loyalty. No one moved. I believed silence meant obedience. I believed obedience meant safety." His gaze settled on Mara for one brief moment. It did not. The softness in his eyes disappeared when he turned back toward Malrek. "It meant no one dared tell me the truth." Malrek spread his hands. "And now a servant has told you a more pleasing one." Ronan reached into his coat. He removed Luna Alara's letter. This was found inside the glass moonhouse. The court erupted in whispers. Malrek looked toward the page. "She wrote it before her death," Ronan continued. "She discovered Silver Dusk being purchased through nursery accounts. That proves nothing about me." "No," Ronan said. "Not alone." Gideon stepped forward and placed both guard logs on the council table. "One record is held in the official archive," he said. "The other carries my private verification mark." Malrek glanced at the pages. "The captain could have altered them." "I could have," Gideon replied. "Which is why I brought the archive clerk who copied the original." An elderly man emerged from behind the guards. His head was still bandaged from the fire. He bowed before Ronan. "The official log was replaced after the moonhouse burned," he said. 3 guards entered Miss Vale's room under the Chancellor's seal. Malrek's eyes hardened. An injured servant seeking royal favor. The archive clerk looked at him. "My son serves in your private guard. You threaten him if I spoke." A low murmur spread through the chamber. Malrek turned toward the council. "Words. Nothing but frightened words." Caleb stepped forward. He carried the cloth wolf beneath one arm and the tonic bottle in the other. The little boy looked very small in the enormous hall. Ronan started to move toward him. Mara touched his arm. "Let him choose." Ronan looked at her. Concern tightened his face. Caleb was shaking. Every instinct in Ronan demanded that he carry his son away from the watching court. But Mara was right. The children had been silenced long enough. Ronan stayed where he was. Caleb placed the bottle on the table. "This is what they made us drink." Malrek looked down at him. "You do not understand what medicine is." Caleb's nose wrinkled. "I understand smells." The boy pointed at Malrek's gloves. "That smells the same." Malrek slowly hid his hands within his sleeves. Finn noticed. That is what guilty people do in stories. Several nobles turned their faces to hide startled smiles. Malrek glared at the boy. Finn moved closer to Mara. Not behind her. Beside her. Corvin was brought forward. He looked older than he had the day before. Fear had hollowed his face, and smoke from the tower still darkened the edges of his coat. Ronan's voice became cold. "Tell them." Corvin stared toward Malrek. The Chancellor met his gaze without blinking. For several seconds, the healer seemed unable to speak. Then Ivy slipped from Gideon's arms. She walked toward Corvin and held up the crushed moonbell. "You said it would make us better." Corvin closed his eyes. His shoulders collapsed. "It was never meant to make you better." The words fell heavily into the hall. Malrek took one step forward. "Be careful, Doctor." Corvin laughed once. It was a broken sound. "I have been careful for 4 years." He turned toward the court. "I prepared the tonic under the Chancellor's instructions." Silver dusk was diluted with calming herbs and clove oil. The doses weakened the air's scent recognition and delayed their first transformations. Gasps rose from the balconies. One council elder stood. "Why?" Corvin looked at the emergency charter on the table. So the heirs could be declared unfit before their 7th year. Every eye turned toward Malrek. The Chancellor remained still. Corvin continued. "The poison placed on the king's ceremonial collar was stronger. It was designed to force a violent transformation during the Iron Silence ceremony." Mara felt Ronan's arm become rigid beneath her fingers. He looked at her hand resting against him. She started to withdraw it. Ronan covered it briefly with his own. A silent reassurance. Then he released her and faced the court. "If I lost control publicly, the council would declare me unfit." And with the heirs weakened, Gideon said, the Regency Charter would give Malrek the throne in everything but name. Malrek laughed. The sound carried across the chamber. "You are all listening to a confessed criminal." Corvin reached inside his coat. A guard immediately drew his blade. Corvin slowly removed a brass key. "The full ledger is beneath the council dais." Malrek's face changed. Gideon saw it. So did Ronan. 2 guards moved toward the raised platform. Malrek stepped in front of them. "No one touches the council records without lawful authority." Ronan's voice dropped. "I am the lawful authority. You abandoned the throne. I left a hearing to save my daughter. You chose a child over a kingdom." Ronan looked around the hall. "No." He looked toward Finn, Caleb, and Ivy. "I remembered what the kingdom was for." A few guards lowered their weapons. Then more followed. Malrek saw the shift. Fear flashed beneath his carefully controlled scent. He reached toward the ceremonial brazier beside the council table. Mara noticed first. "Ronan." Malrek struck the side of the iron bowl. A hidden compartment opened. Gray powder spilled into the flames. Sweet smoke erupted through the hall. Clove oil. Silver dusk. Ronan inhaled before he could turn away. His body went rigid. The change began immediately. Dark veins spread along his neck. His claws tore through the ends of his gloves. His eyes burned gold. People screamed. Guards raised swords. Malrek stepped backward with a look of satisfaction. "Look at him," he shouted. "This is your king, a beast who cannot control himself." Ronan fell to one knee. The stone cracked beneath his claws. His wolf roared inside him, demanding release. Every heartbeat in the hall became thunder. Fear filled the air. Hundreds of terrified scents pressed against his mind, feeding the poison. Malrek had chosen the perfect weapon. Ronan had ordered everyone to fear him. Now their fear was helping destroy him. "Clear the hall," Gideon shouted. People rushed toward the doors. Mara ran toward the smoking brazier. A guard caught her arm. Ronan's growl shook the pillars. The guard released her. Mara pulled a heavy curtain from the wall and wrapped it around the brazier. Smoke continued to escape through the fabric. "Open the upper vents," she shouted. No one moved. The guards were staring at Ronan. Mara climbed onto the council table, seized a ceremonial spear, and drove its end into the vent control above the wall. The first iron panel opened. Cold air entered. Gideon, the captain, understood. He ordered his soldiers to open the remaining vents. Malrek backed toward the side door. Finn saw him. "He is leaving." Caleb pointed. "He has the sweet bottle." Malrek drew a small blade and seized Ivy. The child screamed. He pressed the blade near her throat. Ronan's wolf surged. His body began to shift. Black fur appeared along his arms, his teeth lengthened. "Come closer," Malrek said, "and she dies." Ronan froze. His breath came in violent bursts. Ivy looked toward him. "Papa." The word reached through the poison. Malrek pulled her tighter. "Show them what you are." Ronan's claws cut deeper into the stone. Mara moved slowly into his line of sight. His golden eyes found her. "Ronan." He growled. The sound was full of pain. Mara did not step back. "You told Ivy no one would force her again." His breathing shook. "You made her a promise." Malrek laughed. "He cannot hear you." Mara kept her eyes on Ronan. "Yes, he can." She lowered her voice. "Do not fight for the throne." Ronan's wolf strained against him. "Fight for the child." Ivy began to cry. Ronan looked at her. Then at the blade. Then at Malrek's arm. He could kill the Chancellor before most people blinked. But the poison had made his movements unpredictable. One mistake would hurt Ivy. Ronan closed his eyes. Slowly, painfully, he forced his claws back into his hands. Malrek's smile vanished. Ronan opened his eyes again. Still gold. Still dangerous. But controlled. "You taught me fear was power," he said. His voice was rough with the wolf. "You were wrong." Mara shifted closer to Malrek's left side. Gideon moved to the right. The Chancellor noticed too late. Ivy bit his hand. Malrek cursed and loosened his grip. Mara pulled the child away. Ronan crossed the distance in one movement. He struck Malrek's wrist, sending the blade across the floor, then drove him against the council table. The wood split beneath the impact. Malrek gasped. Ronan's claws rested against his throat. The entire hall became silent. "Kill me," Malrek whispered. "Prove I was right about you." Ronan's hand trembled. His wolf wanted blood. Elara's death. Miriam's Isile. The poisoned children. Mara's chain. All of it waited beneath his claws. Then Ivy's hand touched his back. "Papa." Ronan looked toward his daughter. Finn and Caleb stood beside Mara. She held Ivy close, but her eyes remained on him. Not afraid. Trusting. Ronan withdrew his claws. "Captain Gideon." The captain approached. "Take him alive." Malrek stared at Ronan in disbelief. "You are weak." Ronan stepped back. "No." He looked toward the broken throne, the terrified council, and the children standing beneath flower petals scattered across the floor. "I am finally strong enough not to become the monster you needed me to be." Gideon locked iron restraints around Malrek's wrists. Two guards dragged the Chancellor away from the shattered table. Beneath the council dais, soldiers found a hidden compartment. Inside were ledgers, payment orders, medical seals, and 4 years of silver dust shipments. The final proof. Ronan turned toward Mara. The poison still burned through his blood. His breathing remained uneven. She approached carefully. "Are you all right?" "No." Her eyes softened. "That was honest." "I am trying something new." Despite the smoke and fear, Mara smiled. Ronan looked at the blood spreading again through her shoulder bandage. "You are hurt. So are you." That was not an answer. "You are very persistent. And you are avoiding the question." For a moment, the ruined great hall disappeared around them. Ronan lifted his hand. He stopped near her face, waiting. Mara understood. She leaned slightly into his palm. His fingers touched her cheek with extraordinary care. Not a claim, not a command. A quiet confirmation that she was alive. His eyes closed for one brief second. "I thought I had lost you in the tower," he whispered. Mara's breath caught. "You had only just released me from prison." That did not make the thought easier. Something warm and painful passed between them. A feeling built from missed chances, frightened glances, and concern neither had been brave enough to name. Finn stepped between them. "Are you going to kiss?" Ronan's hand dropped. Mara turned bright red. Caleb looked thoughtful. They were standing close. Ivy nodded. Gideon suddenly found the evidence ledger fascinating. Ronan looked at his children. "This is not the appropriate time." Finn glanced around the burned, broken hall. "When is?" Mara covered her mouth, but laughter escaped anyway. Ronan stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not the cold smile of a ruler. It was tired, reluctant, and real. The court saw it. So did his children. Ronan turned toward the nobles and guards who remained. "Tomorrow, Malric Voss will face public judgment." His voice grew stronger. "But tonight, this kingdom will hear mine." He looked toward the empty throne. "I ordered Blackridge to fear me because I believed fear would keep betrayal away." His gaze moved to Mara. "All it did was silence the people brave enough to warn me." Then he faced the court. "The iron silence edict is ended." No one moved at first. Then an old servant near the eastern wall began to cry. One guard lowered his sword. Another knelt. Not from fear, from relief. Ronan looked at the three children who had covered him in flowers that morning. The crown was gone. His hall was damaged. His authority had been questioned before the entire kingdom. Yet for the first time in years, Thornkeep no longer felt empty. He reached for Ivy. Finn and Caleb crowded beside him. Mara remained one step away. Ronan looked at the space between them. Then he extended his other hand toward her. He did not order her to take it. He waited. Mara looked at his open palm. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Together, they faced the kingdom that fear had nearly destroyed. And beneath their feet, among ashes, broken stone, and discarded weapons, a single white moonbell remained untouched. Morning entered Thornkeep without bells. For the first time in years, no iron command announced the beginning of the day. No council servant hurried through the halls carrying orders signed before sunrise. No guards warned the palace staff to lower their voices as the Alpha King passed. The fortress simply woke. Soft light touched the broken windows of the great hall. Servants swept ash from the black stone floor. Carpenters examined the cracked council table. Flower petals remained scattered near the throne, pale against the dark stone. No one removed them. At the center of the hall, Malric stood in iron restraints. He no longer wore his gloves. The skin beneath them was stained where moonbell petals had reacted to traces of silver dusk and clove oil. Without his dark robes, private guards, and carefully controlled court, he looked smaller than anyone remembered. But there was still no regret in his eyes. Only anger. Ronan sat on the throne with Finn, Caleb, and Ivy beside him. Mara stood near the children. She had been offered a place among the royal advisors. She had refused. "I prefer standing where I can reach the pups," she had explained. Finn had immediately declared this excellent judgment. Ronan had said nothing, though his gaze had remained on her longer than necessary. Mara wore a clean blue dress borrowed from Agnes. A fresh bandage rested beneath the fabric at her shoulder. Her wrists still carried faint marks from the iron restraints. Ronan noticed them every time she moved. Each mark felt like a private accusation. Gideon stepped into the center of the hall and opened the recovered ledger. He read every payment aloud. Silver dusk purchased through nursery accounts. Clove oil delivered to Corvin's private laboratory. Guards paid to alter patrol records. Money transferred to the men who had locked the glass moonhouse from outside. Finally, he read the oldest entry. The one written 4 years earlier. Payment authorized for the preparation of Luna Alara Blackthorn's traveling medicine. The hall became completely silent. Ronan's hands tightened against the throne. Mara saw his wolf move beneath his skin. She stepped closer without touching him. He felt her presence anyway. Malrek looked toward the assembled nobles. You believe a ledger because a servant found flowers in a ruined garden? No, Ronan said. We believe the ledger because every lie you told required another life to remain silent. Corvin was brought forward under guard. He confessed to altering Elora's medical report. He admitted that Miriam Vale had discovered the Silver Dusk shipments and attempted to warn the Luna. Miriam had not poisoned Elara. She had tried to save her. Mara lowered her eyes. For years, she had imagined what it would feel like to hear those words spoken publicly. She had expected relief. Instead, grief rose inside her with such force that breathing became difficult. Her mother's innocence had survived. Her mother had not. Ivy slipped her hand into Mara's. Caleb took the other. Finn leaned against her uninjured side with none of the dignity expected from a royal heir. Mara looked down at the three children. You are crushing me very lovingly, she whispered. Finn tightened his arms. You are welcome. A quiet sound escaped Ronan. This time, he did not hide the smile. Gideon continued reading. The evidence proved that Malrek had planned to activate the Regency Charter, declare Ronan unstable, and keep the triplets from awakening their wolf forms. When the final statement ended, Ronan rose. Malrek lifted his chin. Do you expect an apology? No. Ronan descended from the throne. I expect nothing from you again. You would have lost this kingdom without me. I nearly lost it because of you. You needed fear. I needed truth. Malrek laughed bitterly. Truth does not hold borders. No, Ronan replied. People do. And people cannot protect a king who has trained them to remain silent. He faced the witnesses. Malrek Voss is stripped of title, property, council protection, and family authority. He will spend the remainder of his life in Iron Hollow. A murmur passed through the nobles. Some had expected execution. Malrek did too. You should kill me, he said. Ronan's eyes remained cold. You spent years deciding who deserved to disappear before they could speak. He looked toward Mara. You will not receive that mercy. Malrek was taken away in chains. Corvin was sentenced to 15 years and ordered to surrender every medical record he had altered. His property would fund independent healers for the royal nursery and the poorer territories beyond Thornkeep. Then Ronan called Mara forward. She hesitated. Finn nudged her. You are supposed to walk. I know. You are not walking. I am considering escape. Ronan heard her. His eyebrow lifted. Mara approached the throne. For a moment, the old habits of the court returned. The servants expected her to kneel. The nobles waited for Ronan to grant her a reward. Mara began to lower herself. Ronan stepped down. He stopped her before her knee touched the floor. No. She looked up at him. My king? You will not kneel while I correct an injustice committed by my crown. His hand remained beneath her elbow. Warm. Steady. Careful of her injury. Ronan faced the court. Miriam Vale was innocent. Her name will be restored in every royal record. Her grave will be returned to Blackridge soil, and the kingdom will honor her as a woman who died protecting its Luna. Mara's lips parted, but no words came. Ronan lowered his voice so only she could hear. I should have found the truth years ago. You are carrying your own grief. That does not excuse what happened to her. No. Mara did not offer him easy forgiveness. Ronan respected her more for it. But you listened when the truth became difficult, she continued. Many kings do not. His gaze softened. I had an unusually persistent laundry worker. She sounds exhausting. She is. Mara looked offended. Ronan's mouth curved. She is also the bravest person in this hall. The warmth in his voice made her forget the watching court for one dangerous second. Finn whispered loudly to Caleb. Now they are staring again. Caleb nodded. It is becoming frequent. Mara stepped away from Ronan before her face revealed too much. The king watched her return to the children. He already missed the warmth of her arm beneath his hand. She had only moved a few steps. That realization troubled him. It also made him feel strangely alive. 3 months later, spring returned to Blackridge. The glass moonhouse stood open beneath a new roof. Fresh panes reflected the mountains. Moonbells grew along the restored stone paths. Lavender filled the air, no longer mixed with ash or clove oil. A silver plaque rested near the entrance. In honor of Luna, Alara, Blackthorn, and Miriam Vale, who spoke when silence was safer. Mara became keeper of the royal nursery and moonhouse. She was given chambers near the garden, a salary that made her stare at the document for several minutes, and authority over every healer who treated the royal children. She still repaired clothing when nervous. No title had cured that habit. Ronan visited the moonhouse each evening after council. At first, he claimed he came to inspect the reconstruction. Then the construction ended. He began claiming he came to check the children's progress. The children were often elsewhere. Mara never mentioned this. She enjoyed watching a feared Alpha King invent increasingly poor reasons to stand beside her among the flowers. One evening, she found him waiting near the winter roses with 2 cups of tea. "You dislike tea," she said. "I have been informed people speak while drinking it. People also speak without it. That has not worked well for me historically." Mara accepted the cup. He had remembered that she took honey, but no milk. She tried not to be moved by the detail. Ronan noticed her new assistant, Elias, carrying several pots across the garden. The young gardener smiled at Mara. "You should rest, Miss Vale. I can finish the western bed. I am not tired. You are working before sunrise." Ronan looked toward Elias. "He appears very concerned about your schedule." Mara sipped her tea. "He is kind. He is distracting." From the flowers? From his work. Elias was carrying 4 heavy pots without difficulty. Mara's eyes brightened with amusement. "Your Majesty, are you criticizing his gardening or his face?" Ronan nearly choked on his tea. "I have no opinion about his face. You looked at it for quite some time." "I was evaluating him. For royal service? For possible weaknesses." Mara laughed. The sound moved warmly through the garden. Ronan looked away, though his ears had become slightly red. She stepped closer. "Are you jealous?" "No." That answer was very fast. "I am an Alpha King. I do not become jealous of gardeners." "Of course not. He is also too young for you." Mara blinked. "Elias is 34. Ronan stared at her. "He looks 20. He moisturizes." Ronan's expression became deeply suspicious, as though skincare were a new form of political deception. Mara laughed again. He had begun to understand that her laughter was not disrespect. It was trust. He would have embarrassed himself before 100 gardeners to hear it. Not that he planned to admit this. Across the moonhouse, Finn attempted to climb a watering frame. Caleb informed him that it would break. Ivy sat beside a moonbell bed with a small black wolf pup asleep in her lap. Their strength had returned slowly. Finn transformed first, becoming a dark gray pup with 1 white paw. Caleb followed 2 weeks later. Ivy's transformation came last. Ronan stayed beside her throughout the entire night. Mara remained too. At dawn, a small black wolf with silver-tipped ears crawled into Ronan's lap and fell asleep. He had cried then. Only once. Mara had pretended to be fascinated by the curtains. He loved her a little for that kindness. He had not told her. Not yet. 10 months after Malrek's fall, the people of Blackridge gathered for the spring oath. Ronan stood before them without the black iron crown. He had ordered it melted and remade into 3 small ceremonial pins for his children. No one was required to kneel. The king spoke from the steps outside Thornkeep, where servants, nobles, farmers, warriors, and Omegas could stand together beneath the open sky. "A throne cannot hear the truth when everyone before it is afraid," he said. "From this day forward, no servant will be punished for reporting danger. No council may seal royal records without independent witnesses. And no child in this kingdom will be called weak because fear has made them quiet." Mara stood near the moonhouse doors. Ronan found her in the crowd. He always did. Finn, Caleb, and Ivy suddenly appeared carrying armfuls of flowers. A ripple of laughter moved through the people. Ronan saw them coming. This time, he did not look surprised. He knelt before they reached him. Finn placed several moonbells into the king's dark coat. Caleb adjusted them twice until they were balanced. Ivy set a flower crown over her father's hair. The crown leaned badly to one side. Ronan left it exactly as it was. Finn stepped back. You look less terrifying now. Only less? Mostly less. The people laughed. Ronan did too. The sound surprised those who had known him longest. Mara felt tears warm her eyes. The man before her was still powerful, still scarred, still capable of frightening entire armies. But his children no longer feared coming close enough to cover him in flowers. That was the victory no battlefield had ever given him. Later, after the celebration ended, Mara returned to the moon house. Ronan was already there. He held a watering can in one hand. Water flooded the soil around a row of moonbells. Mara hurried forward. You are drowning them. I am watering them. They are flowers, not enemy fortifications. Ronan stopped pouring. You told me they needed more water. I said a little more. That is not a measurable instruction. Mara took the watering can from him. Their hands touched. Neither moved away. The evening light passed through the glass roof, turning the garden gold. Ronan's expression grew serious. Mara. She knew something had changed before he spoke. He looked almost nervous. The sight was so unusual that she briefly forgot how to breathe. I have spent most of my life giving orders, he said. I have not always understood the difference between being obeyed and being chosen. Mara remained quiet. Ronan took one slow breath. I will not claim you because I am king. I will not ask you to become Luna because my children love you. And I will not use a bond to make a choice you have not made freely. Her heart beat painfully against her ribs. What are you asking? Ronan looked directly into her eyes. May I court you? Mara blinked. Not as your king, he added. As a man who thinks of you when you are not in the room. Who notices when you skip meals. Who dislikes gardeners for reasons that are apparently unreasonable. A smile touched her lips. Ronan continued before courage abandoned him. As a man who nearly enters the laundry every morning because he remembers that was where you worked and then remembers you no longer work there. You miss me before breakfast? Yes. That sounds serious. It is becoming inconvenient. Mara laughed softly. Ronan's gaze warmed. She placed the watering can into his hands again. You may court me. Hope appeared in his face. But you should begin with the moonbells. He looked down at the flooded soil. I have already failed them. Then you will need patience. I have been practicing. Mara reached up and straightened a single flower still caught near his collar from the ceremony. Ronan's breath slowed beneath her fingers. Tomorrow evening, she said. Tea in the moon house. Without gardeners? She gave him a knowing look. Jealousy does not suit a man wearing flowers. I was not jealous. Tomorrow evening, Your Majesty. He smiled. Ronan. Mara paused. Then her expression softened. Tomorrow evening, Ronan. From behind a row of winter roses, 3 small heads appeared. Finn whispered, Are they going to kiss now? Caleb considered the distance between them. Possibly. Ivy smiled. Ronan closed his eyes. I can hear you. The children ducked behind the flowers. Mara began laughing. Ronan looked at her, at the garden, and at the 3 little pups hiding badly among the roses. Once, Thornkeep had been a fortress filled with silence. Now laughter moved beneath its roof. Flowers grew where lies had been buried. Children ran toward their father instead of away from him. And the woman once dismissed as a useless Omega stood beside a king who had finally learned that true strength was not measured by how many lives feared him. It was measured by how many lives felt safe enough to place their trust, their laughter, and their flowers in his hands. So, this is where Mara and Ronan's story finally grows quiet. Are you still here with me? Then maybe you felt what sat beneath all those flowers, jokes, and little moments of tenderness. This was a story about betrayal, about being misunderstood, and about carrying pain without begging the people who hurt you to see your worth. Mara never needed to shout to prove she was strong. She stayed gentle, but she did not surrender her dignity. When the palace doubted her, chained her, and used her mother's shame against her, she did not beg for a place beside the throne. She held on to the truth. And had Ronan chosen fear over trust again, she would have walked away before allowing love to cost her self-respect. That is a difficult kind of courage. We cannot control who lies about us, who fails us, or who chooses fear over truth. We can control what we become afterward. We can protect our character, leave what dishonors us, and choose ourselves again without becoming cruel. Ronan learned that power could force silence, but it could never create trust. Mara showed him that real strength can wear a soft voice and apparently, occasionally, a crooked flower crown. If this story spoke to you, comment dignity below. And gently, if you enjoyed spending this time with us, please like, share, and subscribe.